Right. Guys, we're on. Good evening, everybody. Tonight the council has a couple of workshops. First one is on affordable housing, an informational overview, and then franchise fees. And with that, let's go ahead and begin the workshop. Pat?
Yes. So part of this impetus was this report that was in your packet, and it was developed by the builders of Minnesota. And just to give a little background on the report and how Victoria is referenced in the report, one of the authors of the report called the former city manager, interim city manager, Doug Reeder, myself, and Kara, and asked us about 10, 12 questions on a 10-minute conference phone call, and produced this report and compared us with other cities. And again, unfortunately, never asked us on review of the report or the information in the report. So if you read the report, and from a city's perspective, there's a lot of misinformation in the report. So we kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, is what we're trying to say. Also, after this report was produced, they had a presentation at the Sensible Land Use Coalition meeting. And some of the information that I'm presenting tonight is from the report and also from this meeting that I attended. At the meeting, this group stated that in 2012, 78% of the housing was affordable in the metropolitan area. In 2019, that dropped to 65% was affordable. Between 2010 and 2017, the metropolitan area added 83,000 households, but only 64,000 housing units. Out of 3,038 housing units in Victoria, 638 are considered affordable, so roughly 21%. And affordable is defined differently for all different communities. Affordable is 30% of the median income is going towards housing. So affordable house is much different in Victoria than, say, North St. Paul, for example, because the median income in Victoria is much higher than in North St. Paul. Met Council estimates that 434 affordable housing units will be needed in Victoria by 2040. The price of new single-family homes. I thought this was interesting because, again, this is coming from the report, but if you look at all the different things that go into the price of a single-family home, it's pretty substantial. The first column is all the land costs. So there's undeveloped land, the price of the undeveloped land, the trunk charges, stormwater and erosion control, parks and open space, engineering fees, streets, sidewalks, and curbs, grading, pump stations, storm sewers, and water and sewer lines. Then there's the construction costs, labor and material. That's the largest portion of a price of a new single-family home. Then there's building code requirements, energy code requirements, plumbing code, electrical code requirements, building permit fees, connection fees. Then there's administrative costs from the developer side. There's the sales staff and marketing, office staff, taxes that they pay, and overhead costs. And then lastly, the profit. If you took a look at all the fees, all the costs that are go into the a single-family home. Again, this is going based on their study, which we didn't, again, confirm the numbers, but just based on their study, city-related versus non-city-related costs. New home price that they have as an example is $413,990. The fees that we have from engineering, green space, plan review, building permit fees, and SAC and WAC fees total $34,000, roughly $35,000 of that, so 8.3%. The pie chart kind of explains what our fees are compared to the development costs of a single-family home, again, according to their information. One of the things that they talked about at the SLUC meeting was just the supply and demand. And these are a couple graphs that kind of hit home. So baby boomers, as you know, are the ones who drove the housing demand in the 1980s and is driving the senior housing demand now. If you looked at that baby boom comparison to what the millennials are twice the amount of people that are in the baby booms. And it's going to have a huge impact on starter homes, apartments, and townhomes. And that's what you're seeing today. That's why you see all apartment buildings being built in Minneapolis and the surrounding suburbs, because of the millennials. It's going to have a significant impact on housing from here on out. The other thing that they shared was new house supplies. New house supplies in the metropolitan area was pretty high, average 18,000 new homes a year until the 2006 when the recession started in 2007. And even since then, it's rebounded a little bit, but it's not even nearly half of what it was pre-recession. So you have a significant demand from the millennials and a very low supply. And
what's the reason for that?
The housing supply. A lot of it is just the economy and finding contractors. You talk to the developers, and they're having a hard time finding contractors for every piece of the development, and it just slows down the course of development. So that again was what's that?
It sounds like you gave me part of the reason, but I mean, housing ability to build houses is half what it was in the last economic upturn. And the answer is they can't find contractors? What is the answer?
A good part of that is that they don't have the work. The labor is not there that it was before the recession because of the
Because they all
economy.
left the industry.
Yeah, they left the industry as part of it. That's the part I know. I mean, there might be some other, maybe from somebody from the CDA can explain, but that's the rationale, the reason that I know of why it's not.
I mean, it's astounding. I've never seen that before. If that's accurate, it's absolutely astounding.
Right. Yeah, this table is from the Housing First group.
You shocked me. I haven't recovered yet.
I was shocked too, and that's why when I saw this presentation, I included it in tonight's memo because I was thinking, wow, that really explains why house prices are high, because they're not building the houses nearly what it was historically.
Yeah. Demand raises price.
Right?
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
That was all for my presentation. Just kind of give you a high-level discussion on the cost of housing.
So when I went through I looked at that report. In Victoria, they had a specific house address pulled out. And when I went through that, it seemed to me to be misleading because they referenced when we oversize pipes in a development, right? Because we know the next development over is going to need a bigger pipe. The developer doesn't want to pay for that, so they put in, just as an example, they may put in a 6-inch pipe, but we tell them put in a 12-inch pipe. They put in 12 inches, and then what happens is the city reimburses them the difference in the cost, right? And we pay that back. But in the report, if I read it correctly, it said that we require them to put in the oversized pipes and that they have to pay all of that cost, which is not accurate. Did you have a chance to look at that at all?
We did. So that's, again, one example of probably many that we find that staff said that is inaccurate of how we operate. But that is correct. We pay the developer for the cost of oversizing pipes that are needed.
So a lot of what was in that report we need to take with a grain of salt because it wasn't completely accurate?
Correct. We didn't look at it to be able to double check and it would have been nice to have that dialogue going back and forth to have a complete report.
Did you find other instances where things weren't necessarily 100% accurate?
Right.
All right. What's the net effect for us? I mean, this really doesn't have any impact on us, the city residents. It's just a data point, if you will.
Right. One of the things that we do plan on doing in the next year is just looking at our building permit fees and Sac and Whack fees and make sure that we're in the industry standard, average, probably in the next year, I said.
So we just, the Finance Committee met just before this, and we looked at the auditor's report. And Dana, Deb, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, looking at that summary, our fees are in line. In fact, we seem to be right in the middle for most categories as far as fees the city charges for development, right? So we weren't by any means the highest, nor were we the lowest. We were right kind of in the middle there. Does that line up with how you're aware of the fees?
Yeah, so just based on their report again, I think they compared us to Blaine and Lakeville, and we were in the ballpark with those two communities with our fees,
All
our
right, so
development fees.
in the auditor's report, I think they compared us to like cities, and they also compared us to other cities in Carver County. Is that right? Do you remember that slide?
I don't know if it was other cities in Carver County. I do know
Class
that
4
it
cities.
was
Right.
class 4 cities.
Right. So, all right, so nothing that we need to be concerned about in this report. There's nothing that we need to take action on or look at any further?
No.
Okay. Council, any other questions?
It just leaves me with a lot of questions. I mean, how do we deal with this? What pictures does that paint for the city going forward?
Right, we certainly have a marketing problem,
Yeah,
and I appreciate the fact that we can review the costs that we can control. And so I think, I think that's a good first step, is to review the costs that we can control and compare those costs.
Well, my question on that is, even if we can compare the costs, and, you know, I've been told that we're in the ballpark, and I agree we should look at those and make sure. But when we're dealing with a builder, he's going to, no matter what his cost is, he's gonna get as much money as he can. So if we lower our costs, he will probably just make more profit, especially with the shortage of housing because of the demand. So I don't know if that's gonna help us or not.
Well, I'm looking at page 56 of this report, and it says that the regulatory share of the home in Victoria is over 25%, and they compare it to Blaine, which is 21, Lakeville, which is 20, and Southwest Chicago, which is 13. So I think we should take a look at what those costs are and see why we're higher.
Well, I'm not sure that accurately reflects Victoria, though, because doesn't that include the regulatory costs from other agencies that are outside of Victoria?
That's what I want to know. I mean, is it, we can only control what we can control.
Right.
The rest of it, if it's Met Council costs, those kinds of things, that's a different story. That's a different sort of a
Right.
conversation.
That's a valid point. I think when I went through this, I think we have to take anything we read in that report as a grain of salt. It was paid for and developed by the developers themselves. And I know we found some specific instances where it's misleading. If in fact our rates are right in line with other comparable cities, and we're not too high and not too low, and all of the fees, I think we had this discussion before, all of our fees, they're not the types of fees that were challenged, excuse me, that were challenged in court. So all of our fees are legal, right? We don't expect any legal challenges to those?
We do not expect any legal
Okay,
challenges.
so it's not a bad idea to ask the questions, but, that slide, Deb, that you referenced, I think that's somewhat misleading by the developers to say the regulatory fees and we're above that, when if we look at only our portion, which we control, we're right in line with everybody else. So I think the other fees, we're never going to be able to do anything with the other fees. So I think maybe if we just ask staff to confirm that we are in line with comparable cities, and once we've done that, I think we've done, if you will, any due diligence, unless there's other specific issues you find in that report that you think that we need to look into.
Was there
Oh, you're-
anything else?
Directing that question.
No, I'm just
to you.
asking, is there, if there's other things, I don't have any problem asking staff to look at them, but I just, in my opinion, I think this report was, given that we've already found issues in it, I don't want to spend a lot of time looking at something that maybe doesn't have any value for us. It's not going to change. If we know our fees are right, then I think we just move on. So,
This PowerPoint you prepared, or where did you get it?
So this,
And why does it say price of a new single-family home when it's depicting volume of houses built?
the general presentation was
Oh, okay.
talking about the price of single-family homes. So this graph I got from the Minnesota Home Builders. This graph I produced myself. Number of births, and that's in the metropolitan area. This graph I produced myself just looking at the information that they had for the city of Victoria. This is just the table I constructed, and some of this is from our comprehensive plan. I think the last bullet point's from our comprehensive plan, but the first 3 bullets are from this Housing First.
So Pat, go back to that slide that showed our costs right here. So this is from the report.
Correct.
Are these numbers accurate?
I didn't verify. I just took from the report and compared what the percentage of the fees that they are saying is contributing from the city versus everything else that is contributing, because it is a very small percentage at 8.3%. That being said, the SAC and WAC fee is probably the largest one, and I mentioned that that's one of the things we will be looking at in our next year.
Mm-hmm. So these are the ones that I think are interesting. We should find out, A, is this accurate? And then B, what do our peer cities charge for these very same things? So you've got a side-by-side comparison, so you know you're comparing apples to apples.
Because it shows engineering is the highest by far.
And even the engineering, that all depends on so many things go in the engineering fees, and a lot of it is the quality of their engineer and the quality of the construction, because our engineering fees depends on if they're doing a good job or not. If they're not doing a good job, then it's more time for our engineers to review the things. So again, it's so difficult, so challenging to determine if these are appropriate fees or not. It's not a flat fee that we have for engineering per house. It all depends on how many times they have to revise the plans and for our engineers to review them.
Yeah. Well, a couple months ago, we added a $200 fee for a plat review, for instance. That
Yeah.
we just piled that one right on the top, and I think we should take a look at them.
so is it fair to say that the council wants to ask staff to take a look at the fees that Victoria controls exclusively and confirm that we're in line with expectation in similar cities?
Yes.
Yes?
Yep.
Seems reasonable.
Okay. Pat, do you need anything else? Dana?
No.
Couple things. Mayor, members of the council, we'll bring that back as part of our 2020 budget process, so you have that information. And then before we transition, we also have 2 guests here from the CDA, and I would like to have them, if council's okay, to have them come up and give their presentation. Allison and Brenda are going to be talking about the state of the CDA and the things that they're working on, and then how that translates over to Victoria. So I'll just turn it right over to you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Name and positions for the
Yep.
record, please.
Allison Strike, I'm the Deputy Director.
And I'm Brenda Lano, I'm the Carver County Community Development Manager.
So Mayor and council members, thank you so much for having us. A few of you will recognize me from a few years ago when we were trying to develop an affordable senior development in the city of Victoria. So we had met with Dana probably about a month ago just to come out and meet with her, and we've been just touching base with all the cities on land trust expansion we're doing, and she had asked to come out and have us talk a little bit about a housing study the CDA commissioned and give you a brief overview of the CDA. So I will try to keep the CDA portion short so we can discuss affordable housing. But the mission, this is for me, right? Where am I aiming this?
I think you can aim it anywhere.
Anywhere? The mission of the CDA is to provide affordable housing and foster economic and community development. The CDA owns and manages over 620 units of affordable or subsidized units within Carver County, which means they all either have an income limit or a rent restriction on them. And I apologize, there was a couple typos on here. So we have 30 units of land trust throughout Carver County, and we do have one of those units in Victoria. The land trust model is an affordable type of home ownership where the value of the land is taken out of the purchase price of the home and held in a trust by the CDA, so that the mortgagee only has to take a mortgage on the house. And that program targets households that are at 80% of area median income or below. And 80% of area median income right now is about $80,000 for a household of 4. We have numerous rental assistance programs through our agency that resident or clients can take those rental assistance with them and rent out in the private market, and we help subsidize their rent. We have our Community Growth Partnership Initiative. We used to have a business loan fund program at the CDA, and a few years ago we repurposed that into an initiative program where the cities can apply for grant funds from the CDA, up to $7,500 for a planning grant, which the City of Victoria did get for your parking study, and then up to $60,000 a year for either a redevelopment or a community development grant. We offer housing counseling services, so foreclosure prevention. We can work with people on pre-purchase counseling. We offer home buyer classes through the CDA. We are a coordinated entry access point, and what that means is for households that are experiencing homelessness, they are able to come into our office and have a homeless assessment done as a way to connect them with resources and then get them on what we call the priority list to then refer them back out to programs that can help. Our Open to Business program, so we contract with the Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers on the Open to Business program for Carver County. And that program is able to offer free one-on-one business consulting for either current business owners or potential entrepreneurs who want to start a business. And then we can also, through that program, connect business owners with financing. We administer the septic and well loan replacement program on behalf of Carver County, so we can offer low-interest loans for septic or well replacement. The Small Cities Development Program, we are able to write grants on behalf of the cities to administer this program. And typically why don't I let you explain that program?
So this program is a program that we administer on behalf of DEED. They actually get the funding from the federal government, and what we can do with that are a couple of different things. It can be used for public facilities, water management, waste management. We can do it for commercial development. We can go into cities where they feel there's a blighted and slum problem and get low interest or forgivable loans, deferred forgivable loans for businesses to improve their buildings and their storefronts. And then we can also do it for single-family homeowners at 80% area median income or below, and we can do it for rent-controlled properties as well. And that can be any rental property as long as the owner of that rental property is willing to follow HUD fair market rents on that property. So they're called a loan, but really they're a deferred loan that's forgiven over time. And the cities have the ability to somewhat control how they're going to do that. For instance, we've done one with the City of Watertown, and the City of Watertown chose that if a business was able to get a loan up to $20,000 and they stayed in business for 5 years, that loan would be forgiven at 5 years. If they went to a $40,000 loan to make improvements on their building, after 10 years that would be forgiven. For a single-family home, it's 7 years. So if a homeowner puts $25,000 into improving their home, remains in that home for 7 years, the loan's completely forgiven. It is forgiven over time, so each year a portion is forgiven and it goes away. And it's no interest, so it's a really nice program for small cities to do.
So as Brenda said, we're administering that for the City of Watertown right now, and we will find out this month. We submitted an application for Norwood Young America, so hopefully we will get awarded that funding as well. We also administer the Minnesota Housing Rehab Loan and Emergency Loan Program in Carver County, and that is for extremely low households that have like health and safety, windows, roofs, accessibility issues, et cetera. And is that a no interest or low interest?
That is a deferred no interest loan.
So it's deferred and forgivable as well. Now, before I move on, any questions about the CDA? Okay. So this next one is just Minnesota Housing Partnership. They do county profiles every 2 years, and this is just an updated 2019 profile. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but it just gives you a snapshot of the county. And so in Carver County, there's 7,490 cost burden households. So what that means is those households are paying more than 30% of their income towards their housing costs, which means they're having to make decisions between paying for, groceries and prescriptions and other expenses that they might have. So now if we want to talk specifically about affordable housing, as Patrick said, there are different definitions of what that really means. From the CDA's perspective, affordable housing is typically housing that is restricted based on a tenant's or a homeowner's on their income, and that has a rent structure or a mortgage that is affordable, that household, that keeps them at 30% of their income for housing costs. Sometimes with seniors, that 30% can be a little bit higher, between maybe 40 and 50, just because they're on more of a fixed income and they have less expenses than, say, a family might. And then you may also have properties where the rents are restricted. So, for example, at the CDA, our land trust program is restricted to 80% of area median income. Our multifamily properties that have income restrictions are 80% of area median income, which I said for a household of 4 is about $80,000. And then our senior properties, that goes up to 100% of area median income. So in 2014, the CDA commissioned a county-wide housing study from Maxfield Research. And then there's 2 slides in here, and we did send that to staff if you have any interest in looking at it. But in 2017, to help facilitate the cities and the county write their 2040 comp plans, we commissioned an affordable housing study update specific to each city. So a lot of what I have in here is from that 2017 housing study, and again, that was sent to staff if you're interested. It's also on our website if you want to review it. So at the time of that study, only 1.4% of housing units constructed in Victoria between 2010 and 2015 met the basic definition of affordable housing, and that's based on that 80% of area median income that we talked about. So this just reiterates what Patrick already said from the Met Council. They're saying that your allocation of affordable housing units is that 434 units. So same information in our 2017 study.
Is that 434 number total or more needed? We need an additional 434 or 434
Right,
total?
it's more.
Okay.
So if you look at this graph, this is a 10-year affordable housing allocation goal, and this actually breaks it down. So your 30% or less that's that real deep subsidy. That's where people truly need some other type of subsidy to get them to the full rent amount. And then what we call a shallow subsidy, which is that 31 to 50% of area median income. And then just the affordable, which is a 49, and that's what gets you to that total of the 434 that's needed. And so one other thing that Dana and Brenda and I had talked about was some questions specific to senior housing within the city of Victoria. So out of this study, it said that only 1% of identified rental options were in some form of affordable housing within Victoria. So you can tell that there's definitely a very high need for some type of affordable senior housing. And then the next 2 slides on each page, it breaks down the housing recommendations for the city for just the next 5 years. So this first one is specific to rental. And then the second one, they break it down by rental and home ownership, because obviously you want to talk about affordable on both the rental side and the home ownership side. So the 2014 countywide housing study recommended that 58% of future rental development in Victoria could be senior designated. However, our 2017 update, what he said in the report was that based on what it looks like, age 55 and older, by 2021 you'll have 42% of households that would qualify for senior designated. He's saying that 58% is a little bit high. So probably closer to about, 42, 45% of future development. So these next two slides, these are from the 2014 housing study because the 2017 didn't break it down as specifically as our 2014 did. But this breaks it down by home ownership, senior housing, and then rental. So this was saying 680 senior units would be needed by 2040, and 180 rental, with 60 of those being subsidized or affordable. And then it sounds like there had maybe been a question around a comparison to Chaska. So their demand by 2040 for seniors is 1,631. And then their affordable demand is 635. And their future demand is about 36%, so it's a little bit lower than the future demand of what they projected for Victoria for senior rental. Questions? A lot of information.
So repeat that statistic. We in Victoria need how many affordable senior units?
Well, if we go back to the Maxfield, which is from 2014, they're saying you need 265 rental and about, but the 2017 is saying it's closer to about 45% rental. And then you'll get your breakdown. So the 2017 doesn't break down the affordable between like senior and just general occupancy. So that 434 would be some general occupancy and some senior.
You think this data, it's 5 years old, the study that it came from, you think it's still prudent to use it? It's still okay as a planning guide, if you will?
I would definitely look at the 2017, the study that was done specific to Victoria, but a lot of what you'll see in the 2017 is he felt that referring to the 2014 was still relevant at the time. He did it just because by the 2014 study was after like the housing market had really started to pick up, and we have not really seen any downward changes in the housing market since the 2017 or still since today.
So based on these numbers, we need a bunch of buildings for seniors.
Right.
That would be affordable?
I think the report would say you would want a mix of both affordable and market rate.
Yeah. And 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we were talking about exactly that.
Yeah, we were working on about 65 units of affordable.
Right. Affordable being that the rent would be
So our income limits would have been at 100% of area median income, and our rent structure would have been such that it would have allowed for people to not be cost burdened. So our rent structures are lower than market rate apartments.
yeah. So we still have a significant need, is what the bottom line is.
Correct.
So who builds these? Is this city-owned, is this CDA owned, or is this private owned?
It would probably, we would love to say they're all going to be the CDA, but from a capacity standpoint, we can't do that. I know we would still love to do a senior development here, but it would be a combination of, private developers, depending on which type of housing you're targeting. If you're talking about affordable, you're looking at more like the CDA or like a nonprofit developer it's in their mission to do affordable housing. And then just, private developers for your market rate type housing. Now, what role the city plays in that is really up to the city, so it depends on the city, and you'll see there's a lot of creative things going on in the metro area on what cities want their contribution to be to make affordable housing projects move forward. So Bloomington's passed a recent ordinance. Minneapolis is doing a ton of stuff around affordable housing. St. Louis Park. So there's different mechanisms cities can do to participate and help make affordable housing projects move forward. Because when you're building affordable housing, for us, it's always the gap. And how do we bridge the gap so that we can keep the rent structures so that they are affordable?
Allison, you mentioned that in a CDA building, your renters can be up to 100% of the median income value. How do you calculate rent structures in a CDA building?
Well, we always look at, obviously, what the demand is. So we'll do a market study. We have kind of what we like to keep for per square foot cost so that we know we feel it is affordable. And so our market studies are always going to factor in, when they do our market studies, they are factoring in that for either a senior building or a general occupancy that we are targeting 100% or 80%. So they factor that in when they help us determine what that rent structure is going to look like. Versus if they were doing a market study knowing that they were targeting a market rate property where they were really trying to maximize their rents and make a profit.
And then do they get property tax? Or they don't, or are they tax exempt?
So the CDA pays pilot. So we pay payment in lieu of taxes. So we don't pay taxes, we pay pilot, which is significantly less. But most of your nonprofits would still pay taxes. So that's because we're a government agency that we pay pilot.
Okay. But the nonprofits would pay taxes?
Yeah, I don't know that any nonprofits would, the pilot is specific to us as a housing authority, so they would just pay taxes like anybody else. Or unless they did a TIF development with the city or something like that. TIF is not something that works for us because we pay pilot, so TIF
Right.
doesn't work for us.
Okay.
Allison, can you talk a little bit about some of the kinds of homes that you've built? Are they all apartment-style living? Do you do townhomes? Do you do duplexes? Talk about that a little bit.
So we have a lot of buildings. We are 55 and older. We have a lot of apartment buildings. And then we have 50 scattered site units that used to be part of our public housing program. So those are houses and townhouses. And then we've just, because it is so costly to build, our focus the last few years has really been snatching up whatever we can get out in the market. So we've purchased like some single-family homes where we have special partnerships with the school districts on those homes. Our land trust program, we have twin homes, single-family homes, townhouses. Am I forgetting anything?
New construction.
Yeah.
Previously
Pretty
built.
much, right. We run the gamut on older housing, newer housing, single-family to our biggest property is 114 units in Chaska. Smallest one is 18 units.
So Allison, you have some nice buildings.
Thank you.
Well, everybody get it in their head that affordable housing is dumpy
No.
buildings. Chaska, if you go to Chaska, and there's a building right behind Byerly's, right? Where's
Chaska?
Chanhassen.
Chanhassen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know where Chaska.
Yeah.
Chanhassen. There's the building right, is it behind Byerly's or is it in,
Yeah,
right
it's
behind
behind there. Yep.
how many floors is that?
3.
3. It's a beautiful building.
Yes, it is.
That's one of yours.
Yes, and we just
Affordable housing.
spent $2 million in 2014 rehabbing it.
If you go
So
to Konya, there's a building that's got City Hall.
City
and
Hall, the library, the
That's
historical
one of your
society.
buildings. Beautiful
Same in
building.
Norwood, City Hall, library, sheriff's station.
Yeah, and you go to Chaska, and the building you're in
Mm-hmm.
is right, what are you next to?
Next to Cooper's.
We're across the street from Cooper's. Yep.
Yeah.
And I would say our scattered site housing and our land trust, I would challenge anyone to drive by not knowing the address and pick out
Yeah.
one of our
So
properties.
when we're talking to you and we say we discern a need for affordable senior housing, there's nothing wrong with the concept. I mean, you're gonna be involved in a building that's decent.
Right. Our goal with our properties is that we are not in it to sell them, and every penny that property earns goes right back into the building.
So what's your newest building in Carver County?
Our newest building is Oak Grove Senior Residence out in Norwood, Young America. So that's 50 units. It's 55 and older, and City Hall and library and the sheriff's station, remote satellite station are in that building.
And when did you build that?
That was built in 2010.
Okay, so it's been a while.
Yep.
Because we're trying to nail down cost per square foot currently. Do you know what the current construction cost per square foot is?
Cost per square foot off the top of my head, no. I can tell you our buildings, we are able to keep the cost per unit below 200,000, and that's pretty difficult to do that even.
So 2 years, again, my point of reference is 2 years ago. We found that if we had a builder that was going to develop an area of Victoria, that builder would have the skills to give you a good quality building at a very good price. And we were talking about the 13.5 acres back 2 years ago. So we still have some things cooking on the 13.5 acres.
Well, and from myself and my executive director, I mean, if possible, we would certainly love to be part of that project. I know she's had a conversation with the current gentleman, just a very brief conversation that, you know, he's working on some things, but that's been about the extent of it so far.
The architect or the builder?
I think it was the builder.
Thank you.
Council, other questions? Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Dana, anything else on that?
Nothing else on that item.
Okay, let's move on to the workshop for the franchise fees and Wasserman Park funding options. Dana, that's you and Trish.
Okay, and Ms. Pollock and I are going to tag team, and we've got a lot of information to cover in the next 45 minutes, so we're going to move through at a pretty quick pace here. We're going to talk a little bit about utility undergrounding and the related franchise fees, and then we're going to transition and talk about Wasserman Park funding strategies. And you'll see as we get along how they're not necessarily related now, but they could potentially be in the future, and you'll see how that ties in as we move through the presentation tonight. The other piece, the other pieces I want to make sure that you know that we're not expecting that you decide on which funding strategy that you want to use for Wasserman Park, the land purchase and the completion of the project. But we'll be looking for some direction. So as we move into our 2020 budget process, that we have an idea of what gives you heartburn or what you might like, what excites you, so we can incorporate 1 or 2 or 3 of those strategies into our financial plan and bring that back to you as part of the 2020 budget. So we'll go through, and at the end we'll walk through some discussion questions that will help us guide some of that direction. Okay, so with that, we're going to dive right into the utility undergrounding, and for the public's benefit, why are we talking utility undergrounding? Really, this started in 2016. We had an opportunity through Excel and some of the issues that they were having with outages and dependability of electricity in the area, and they serve quite a few people, Minbec being the other electricity provider, but had some outage issues and some challenges, and so they decided to move forward with a project that would do some substation improvements. So along with that came an opportunity for us as a city to talk about utility undergrounding and have some cost savings to do that undergrounding along County Road 11, which is where the substation is, in conjunction with that project. So this was a project of opportunity. It was unbudgeted, it was not planned, and so one of the things that we had to decide to do as a city was, how are we going to fund this? This is something we want to do. It has broad public benefit. How do we want to fund that? Enter in your conversation about franchise fees, and that's where this started. So the utility franchise fee discussion took place, and in 2016 you authorized the establishment of utility franchise fees on all your gas and electric, so those 3 providers. Currently that's $3 on residential meter, so per residential meter per month, and $10 per meter per month for commercial units. So you authorized franchise fees in 2016. That project, or those funds, were intended to be used for the County Road 11 undergrounding project. The estimated project came in initially somewhere in the range of, and I missed the 1.2 here, but $1.2 to $1.7 million. That projected cost came and went, and the project was done, and upon project completion, $647,500, and then this should have been updated to say $665 when everything was in and done. So $665 is the number, complete number, totally paid to Excel. We reconfirmed with them last week. We are paid in full. So here's their original cost estimate. And we went ahead and bonded for the $1.7 million, and I'm not quite sure where along the way we decided to go with 1.7 when we knew it was 1.2. We've had some turnover in staff, your city manager position, your finance manager position, so we did not find any documentation on why we chose to do the 1.7 over the 1.2. Could have been timing, could have been something else, but that was not documented. But we did bond for the 1.7. Again, you can see that County Road 11 project came in at $665,000, and so we had an opportunity to come back to council and say, are there other undergrounding projects that you would like to pursue, because we do have some funds available to do this work. And council in 2017 and 2018 said, yes, we'd like to proceed with utility undergrounding in conjunction with our Rose Street parking, and then again with the Steiger Lake Lane improvements. Those total costs came in at $1.1 million, and that means today in your fund balance in 2019, you still have $645,000 left to use for utility undergrounding and or something other than the utility undergrounding, and that's where the tie into the Wasserman Park comes. And you'll see that as we walk through, that is a potential source, whether you just redirect some of that fund balance. It is an authorized use per our resolution, so we are able to do that, or give yourselves a loan and pay that back so you can continue to do undergrounding. And Ms. Pollock will walk us through all of those different options. But that's where that tie-in is going to come in, and we'll spend some more time on that. So a couple of things to note on the actual bond proceeds. We have 3 years to spend bond proceeds. Just for the public's edification, bond proceed meaning we borrowed money, we got the chunk of money, 1.7 in this case, and that's the money that we get to use to pay for the project. And so that's different than the franchise fee revenue that's coming in every month. And so we generally speaking, when you bond, you have 3 years to spend those bond proceed revenues, and those bond proceed revenues must be spent in accordance with your bond resolution. The franchise fees revenues, the state statute says you can use those franchise fee for any authorized purchase. So we can use it for any funds or any general fund or any purchase or expense that we as a city are authorized to use. So there's no limitations other than our own policy limitations. Just to give you a sense of what we're bringing in and what our current commitments are, this past year, $296,000. And when we go through our financial plan and when you see all these things, we know that that's expected to increase as we continue to add to our population. But to make it easy and then to be conservative, we assumed that it's going to stay $296,000. So we're bringing in $296,000, but our commitment to pay back that $1.7 million bond is $135,000 annually. So that means you have approximately $160,000 that's growing in your fund balance. And if you don't have any other expenditures, your fund balance is continuing to grow. Right now, there is not a plan that has been adopted or written or identified by council or adopted by council to do any additional undergrounding other than what's been complete. So assuming this green line this green bar here is just the spending down of those bond proceeds, and then starting over, this just simply is to show you the trajectory that we're on. If we didn't have any other expenditures and we didn't do any utility undergrounding and we didn't spend any of that money in that fund, we would have approximately $2.3 million at the end of the bond when that's paid off, which is estimated to be in 2031. So the first date that that bond becomes callable is in 2024. And what that means is it's the first time that we can look to see if there's refunding or refinancing opportunities for us to pay that loan off or that bond off early. And this is a regular practice that we do, and we do this in conjunction with our financial advisor, that when those bonds become callable, we look at interest rates and everything else to see if there is an opportunity to pay things off early and save some interest. So that first time that happens is in 2024. Otherwise, we're paid off in 2031. So what's changed? Just real quick, $665,000. So we were significantly under budget. We only spent $1 million of the 1.7. That means we have $645,000, and there are no projects currently identified for undergrounding at this time. So now I'm going to do a hard transition into Wasserman Park, and then we'll tie it together again. Just for the public's edification, I know we've been talking about Wasserman Park for a number of years, but some people may be new to Victoria or joining us for the first time, and we want to make sure they understand what we're talking about and why this is something that we're looking at, as it's a significant investment for the city at $3.1 million. So Wasserman Park, when we talk about what this is, it does not currently exist, but it's a 33.5 acre undeveloped parcel, and it's along the Wasserman Lake shoreline. Let's see, this is a collaborative project with the Minnehaha Watershed District, and it's focused around the 6 Mile Creek and Halstead Bay sub-watershed area. And why that's important is because the 6 Mile Creek is the headwaters for the Minnehaha Creek and the Minnehaha Falls in Minneapolis. So the district has purchased the land already with the intent that the city would pay back the district for the land purchase in the amount of $850,000. Why is this park important to us? It's important for a number of reasons. To improve the water quality. Right now there's phosphorus pollution that's in that lake, and so we have an opportunity to clean up the lake and increase or improve the water quality, create additional recreation opportunities, enhance economic vitality, and then improve the quality of life. For our residents and those who come, this would definitely be a regional amenity, so draws people to the city. They eat in our restaurants, they shop in our shops, and they use our services. We are the city of Parks and Lakes, so great regional draw. Because this was a partnership with the district, we initially had a cooperative, or it's called the cooperative agreement, and what that did was define roles and responsibilities and just some high-level detail about the vision, the goals, and then what each party would be contributing or what their responsibilities are in achieving the shared visions and goals. So at a very high level, this cooperative agreement called out that the city would purchase the land from the district, and that would be done kind of in two parts. We would pay half the land up front and then half over a period of 5 years to be charged at a 5.5% interest rate annually. Then we, the city, would develop preliminary plans, hold public open houses to gauge the level of support in the community for this project, and then we would be responsible for pulling together cost estimates and creating that concept plan. And so here's a little snapshot of what the concept plan is. And I just want to note all this information, it's hard to see this on the screen, but a detailed report is in the agenda packet along with this PowerPoint. So if anybody wants to reference this in the future, you certainly can. The park cost estimates, we just broke this down. The land purchase, $850,000. Design costs, $250,000. Park construction, $1.7 million. And a project contingency, $342,000. And I would say this is, from my experience, this is even a very conservative contingency. You're having an outdoor project where you've got a lot of unknowns, including weather, soils, all sorts of different things that could happen and be prepared for, but it's a good thing to have in there. $3.1 million is the total cost estimate for the complete vision, so the purchase of the land through complete vision of this park. And I won't go through the timeline. We essentially just went through there. All these things have been done, but one thing I do want to point out, and is this proposed phasing. And what we did was really break down, if you think about the $1.7 million project costs, construction costs, these are the things that would make up that cost. So if we were to chunk those out into phases that were pretty much evenly split in terms of money, the first phase would be primary trail loop construction, entry road and parking, watershed improvement projects, and grading and utilities, followed by a boardwalk construction, upland trail construction, additional plantings, and adding that fishing pier in, as you saw in the concept plan. And then the final phase would be to add those really great amenities, shelter and restrooms, plantings, kayak launch and outlook dock, as well as a children's play area. This evening, and our Watershed District friends are here in the audience, and this evening when we go through our regular meeting, and we'll go through, and the revised cooperative agreement is something that you're going to be taking action on tonight. And so I'm just going to briefly touch on what the difference is between the original agreement and the revised. And under that revised cooperative agreement, you can see that we're still to reimburse the district for the land purchase. But what's different here is that there would actually be a cost share in the design work. And so if you recall back to the chart, $250,000 for design, this would actually save the city $125,000 under this revised agreement. The park construction costs would still be the same at $2.1 million. That includes the contingency. The district would also, we call out the district's investment in their watershed and natural resource improvement projects as part of this project, and then the district would provide construction management services, which is a key significant for us as it frees up our time as staff to do other things. And we put a value on that at about $25,000. And then financing. So prior to my start, and I believe it was towards the end of the year last year, there was some discussion about the city having the ability to use the district's financing authority to fund the city's share of the construction, potentially land purchase costs. So the cooperative agreement lays out what that would entail if the city were to choose to do that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here too. So things to consider when we're gonna, and Ms. Pollock's gonna take over here and walk you through a bunch of different options. And but things to consider as we're walking through, it is a significant investment, $3.1 million, which is why we're spending the time to really think through how we want to fund this. Regional amenity. The revised cooperative agreement also assumes that all those three phases, if you remember, we just walked through that all those three phases would be done at once. So, just staged. We wouldn't have 10 or 15 years between 5, 10, or 15 years between each stage. And then if we decide as the city that we want to utilize the district's bonding authority, they need to know from us sooner rather than later. And I believe, and they can correct me if I've got this date wrong, but before September 1st, we need to make that commitment. And then you do not have to select or direct us to go down any particular funding path, but to have a discussion about, again, what gives you heartburn or what do you like. You can take any of the options as presented, or we could do a combination of things as we go through. So with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Pollock, our finance manager. And do you have a mouse over there, or do you want me to mouse for you?
I do have a mouse.
Okay.
Make it go.
The mouse that doesn't work.
Maybe you want to click for me.
Yep.
Okay, so option one, we are showing actually increasing the utility franchise fee from what it is now. This franchise fee would be just for the park fund. And we were looking at a $1 increase in residential and $3 in commercial, which would generate $90,000 a year in revenue. We would still be financing half of the land purchased through the district, and we would be bonding for the $2.1 million for the park. So with that, 90,000 increased franchise fee revenue, and then also using some of the development fee revenue and the revenue coming in from the payment that we're receiving from the Lions. We have a spreadsheet here that shows what the effects are on the park fund. It really wouldn't be able to fund the park and also be able to fund the park projects that we have already planned for future. So this option probably would be pretty tough to make work. We would have to probably look at a higher increase in franchise fees than just the $1. And then
Do you want me to go on, or do you want to back up on, skip over this?
I think that, yeah, we could look at this. So the pros to this would be there's not going to be an increase in the levy. We'd be able to complete the park, and there are still available funds for undergrounding projects. But as you saw in the spreadsheet, it depletes the park fund, and we wouldn't be able to fund the park projects that we already have in for the CIP and the increase in franchise fees. This is just kind of a graph showing the pros and cons in that option. And then option 2, we're looking at not starting any additional franchise fees, but just redirecting a portion of the franchise fees that we're already collecting. So as Dana had mentioned earlier, we had the $296,000 annual revenue from those franchise fees, and $161,000 of that is not committed for undergrounding bond payment currently. We would still be financing half of the land purchase through the district, and then $190,000 estimated annual payment for paying back the bond for the park. We would look at using the $161,000 extra revenue from the franchise fees, and then about $29,000 of the Lions note payment. So this scenario shows the park fund being in a pretty healthy condition at the end of 2027. We would come up a little bit short, but as we talked about earlier, we weren't eliminating any of these future projects either, or making any adjustments to those, which
Does this have
may or may not have.
trail connections in there?
No, so the trails are going to be a separate fund.
So does this, there's monies in there for the trails right now, though. Has that been pulled out of there?
Yeah, we talked about that. That was that one park trail. It was a park and trail fund that we had from some development fees from prior. We have a separate trail fund, which is where like that $162,000 went into this year from the general fund transfer, and then the revenue.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
those numbers aren't in here.
Those numbers are not in here.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to keep that trail fund separate from this park. We're actually going to be combining some of these parks and trail funds so that we can keep just parks for parks and just trails for trails to make it a little easier to track.
But this option, you haven't, you have no additional franchise fees available for undergrounding.
Well, we will show you a graph or a chart coming up in a little bit that will show you the effects on the undergrounding. And it does show that there are still revenues available to fund some of the undergrounding projects. So it does mostly preserve that fund with the amount of revenues that are still coming in.
The 645 that you have there?
Yeah,
What-
so
what-
that's just.
What year is that available?
So that is using that, we have the funds available now in the undergrounding fund to pay for the land purchase, whether we pay for all of the land or if we pay for the half and then finance
I
it.
meant, when is it available for undergrounding? Say we need $1,600,000 to $1 million to underground Steeker Lane West.
Mhm. And I'll show you that in the upcoming spreadsheet, because it'll all spell out for you there. Okay, so option number 3 would just be a lot like option number 2, because we'd be using that same portion of that revenue from the undergrounding fund. But this would also be taking a loan from the undergrounding fund to pay for the land. We would save some money doing that because we wouldn't be paying that interest to the watershed district. We would just be paying them the full amount. And then this is the spreadsheet showing the effects. It actually shows a little bit less of a deficit because we're saving that money on that interest that we would have been paying to the watershed district, and we're still able to fund most of the projects that we already have in the CIP. Here's that spreadsheet that you were kind of asking about, the impact on the undergrounding fund. This is actually showing if we were to use that $840,000 to pay off the land this year, and then we would show starting to pay that back up in the loan payment from the park fund in 2021 is when we would start to pay that $840,000 back. So you can see in 2021 that fund really builds up quite quickly when the loan starts to get repaid. So I would say, depending on the costs of the undergrounding.
But in this scenario, the only thing you're paying for is land.
No,
Franchise fees.
no, we are paying for the land and we are going to pay back the bond payment. This is just showing the revenue, the impact on the undergrounding, but in the prior slide, it was showing that, here, it's showing that the $190,000 bond
Okay, it's in
payment is
there,
getting paid.
Debt servicing is in
Yeah.
there.
And it's showing the underground fund getting paid back for that land starting in 2021.
How much money does it show is available for undergrounding year by year?
So here we would have, like 2021, we would have about 410,000.
Hmm.
And then it increases up as we pay that loan payment back. But again, we could do the half of the loan from the watershed district as well, and then we wouldn't need to take that loan from the undergrounding fund, depending on what the schedule is for undergrounding, which is just really unknown right now what we need for undergrounding.
I would say it's within 2 to 5 years.
Okay. Okay. All right, so I think we can go to option 4. This is just doing the bonding and then increasing the levy, and we're estimating that it would be $44 on the median value home. So we wouldn't use any of the undergrounding franchise fees. And then, of course, we're able to keep the park fund stabilized and fund all the future projects. But
So when you say it affects a home $44 a year, that's if you would have raised taxes to cover this.
That's correct.
But you don't know that you have to raise taxes to
That's
cover it
correct.
because your tax capacity is gonna go up. So
Yep, this is all just a projection. That's if,
So,
you know, probably
in
worst
theory,
case scenario.
there's probably no increase to
It's possible.
home value, if our tax capacity increases like it has the last 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. And then option number 5 was something that I think the council had kind of talked about at strategic planning too, that, you know, your goal, your vision was more doing the park in a complete process, like within the next couple years. But we did put together this phasing, and it really would just only pay for the land and the phase 1. And then we would just really wouldn't know when phase 2 and 3 would come along. And then it really doesn't help the park fund out too much by going with this option. As you can see, we just trying to, we'd still have to eliminate a lot of the future CIP projects just by trying to finance that phase 1 through the park fund. There's just not the available funds to do it. So I think I'll let Dana take over on this part.
I can, so before Tricia took over, we talked a little bit about using the district's authority versus the city's authority for bonding, and so we do have that option. And what we want to share is that there's really no significant drawback or benefit for us to doing it one way or another. Except that in here, we did a bonding cost comparison in conjunction with our bond counselor and our financial advisor to see what would those costs be if we were to issue that debt, or if the district, we use their authority to issue that debt. And our fees are just slightly more competitive for what we pay. And so you can see here that if we were to use the district's authority, it would cost us slightly more, about $23,000 to issue that debt. It's the only change. The only difference.
So let me just speak quickly to this. If that's the case, I don't think anybody would support going to, at least I wouldn't support going to the watershed. If there's no benefit and it's going to cost us, or the taxpayers, $25,000 more, then why do it?
And that's one of the questions I'll have. So you
Right, got it.
got ahead of me a little bit there. Okay. So when we first talked about bringing this information back to council for discussion, one of the things that was driving this was having answers to some of the questions that were raised throughout the last several months with the finance committee. So I think throughout the presentation here this evening we addressed that, but just to make sure that we're packaging that up nicely. One of the questions was, can the city pay off undergrounding project bonds early? And the answer to that is yes. They first become callable in 2024. Otherwise, they're paid off in 2031. And this is going back to the utility franchise fee, that $1.7 million bond. What is left to be undergrounded, as I noted earlier, we don't have a plan that we have adopted that is illustrating where we would need to, or laying out any criteria for making future plans for undergrounding. That being said, what's left is mostly neighborhoods. Now, there are some opportunities, for example, making that connection from downtown to downtown west as we develop and do those road improvements, that there's an opportunity to do some undergrounding there. We're kind of late in the construction season to begin. We haven't even talked about that road connection yet. From a project standpoint, more of a visualization piece. So I don't know how much that would help us with spending those bond proceeds right now. Other funds that are available for parks, Ms. Pollock did answer this as Councilmember Vogt raised it during the discussion. There are 2 trail funds that staff are looking to combine in the 2020 budget. that would be dedicated just for trails, and then that leaves the park fund, which is what we use to walk you through the different options. We have an opportunity to combine 2 funds there into one as well, and then we'll have separate parks funding and separate trails funding that I think will be more transparent and easier for the public to follow as well. So now we're going to dive into to discussion, and then unless you want to do questions first, should I guide you through some discussion?
Council, any questions?
Okay.
Just one question. If somewhere in this material, I read that, you know, the transition to go from 0 to building Washman Park, there's going to be a period where, you know, we're going to be doing phase 1 and phase 2, and so we're going to be spending money, and you won't be ready to bond. So there'll be transitional financing costs of some sort. Has that been addressed? Who's going to be spending the money on the construction? Is the watershed district going to be handling everything, or how's that going to work?
So, and I might rely on Ann to help me out here, but what we're talking about for spending money in 2019 would be at a minimum the land purchase or half of the land purchase. And I think we have the funds to be able to do that in any number of different ways to be able to fund that. The next step would be to go into a preliminary design, and there would be some expenditures, and I think we can cash flow some of that with the fund balance and things that we have, and then that would bridge the gap for any bonding. We could still bond in 2019 if we know and we have the timeline. No? 2020 would be bond, maybe.
Hi, Anna Brown, Minnehaha Creek. So to answer your question directly, I don't think that we would need to, we could get the financing in place before construction starts. So like Ms. Hardy said, it's really just a matter of cash flowing the design in the interim and paying for the design. But I think under either scenario, we would be able to secure the financing to actually fund the construction costs. But in terms of timeline, I think we're looking at sort of starting the process of getting financing in place, perhaps starting in late 2019, but we'd probably be looking over the course of 2019, 2020 winter, actually going through the process under either financing scenario of acquiring the funds through that finance mechanism.
Yeah, I was getting at, is there an advantage to going through the watershed district that we haven't quantified on paper, is what I was really getting at. Because right now the score is Victoria is 23,000 ahead of watershed district in terms of making a decision. So.
Sure, Councilmember Vogt. I think in terms of timing and flexibility and fund availability, it's a wash at this point. It's going to be consistent either way.
Let me clarify one point since we're talking about this. For some reason, I had it in my head that if you borrowed the money and we paid you back, was the city going to pay you half a percentage point as far as the interest rate?
So, Mayor, members of the council, that half interest comes into play for the land purchase. Mm-hmm. And so under the cooperative agreement, both the current and the revised agreement, there's some language in there that talks about how we, the city, are going to pay back the district for the land that they've purchased. It would require half of the payment up front. It's $850,000 total. So half that payment up front. And then to help the city kind of cash flow the remaining half, the district has graciously offered us to pay the remaining half over a period of 5 years at a 0.5% interest rate.
All right, so that wouldn't be for the whole park improvement. That would be just
for the land purchase.
Okay, got it. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, that.
Okay. I got a couple of questions.
Yep,
so the 400, so we need to pay half of that cost up front, mm-hmm. and that initial 425,000 comes from the park fund?
Yes, we would use money from the park fund for that.
Okay. Then my second question is, clearly the collection of franchise fees exceeds the cost of the debt service. So one of the things that we never talked about was kind of blinking off that franchise fee and sort of balancing the cost increase in a levy increase with the reduced franchise fees. So we're not going to be collecting franchise fees. So this $3 per residential is a per month?
Per month.
Per month. So that's $36 of residential fees that we're going to continue to collect. But if we blink that off,
64 though. You have $3 for your gas bill and $3 for your electric bill, so each household has $6. So it's $72 a year per household.
That's true.
so if we, that's one of the things that we haven't talked about is if we blinked off that franchise fee after we've secured that, or after we've taken care of our debt service, and then doing a levy for the.
I'd like to see it, when are we going to have the budget workshop? Is that June?
So we will have a preliminary budget workshop, so that's an opportunity for you all to set kind of the direction for the budget and give us some feedback so we can go do our detail work. And that's going to start, or that presentation will happen, or discussion will happen on June 24th.
So I'd like the council to consider, we've got a lot of different options. We don't have all of the data, I think, to make an informed decision yet. We don't know about future undergrounding and what the costs are. We don't know about Marsh Lake Road, what that may cost us. I would like to go to the budgeting workshop. We should have some more ideas as far as what these costs are going to be. And in that budgeting workshop, look at these competing priorities, see what cash we have, because we just found this $665,000, right, that has to be spent in 19?
19.
Right, so, I mean, we could use that to try to purchase the land and then bond for the remaining improvements. I mean, there's options. I would like to try to make that decision when we look at the overall budget, so that we can look at each of the priorities that we have, look at each of the funds that are available and pots of money, and then make the decision, okay, what do we allocate where? What is our priorities? And then hopefully by that time, staff will have had a chance to refine some of these options or any other questions council members suggest, and we make the actual decision then. Because as of right now, the staff is not looking for a decision from us, but clearly what they're showing us is there's a lot of different funds that we could use. I'd also like to give the public time to provide input as to their point of view regarding repurposing the franchise fees, which were originally approved to underground to bury power cables, and repurposing them to actually pay for Wasserman Park. I'm not opposed to that so long as the public, as a general rule, is okay with that. I don't know if diversion is the best word to use, but that reallocation of those funds from what they were originally being collected for. So, and I think hopefully, at least I'd like to see, and Dana correct me, Trish correct me if I'm wrong, by the time we get to June, would we have a better picture of where we sit as far as total funds available and total projects?
If you give us some direction here tonight, that would actually help us narrow down and be able to do that.
Do you think by that time we'll know about Marsh Lake Road and some of the costs associated with that?
I think it's going to be really close. We have been working towards cost estimates, and we will be bringing something to you, I believe, probably that same day, June 24th, is looking like what we're on target for.
So if it's at all possible, I would like to try to encourage council members to come up with any other ideas they have, but I'd like to get that complete picture, that holistic picture of all of the funds available and all of the projects, and try to make that decision when we have all of that data in front of us, instead of trying to solve in these stovepipes where we've got trying to solve one particular issue and we don't know about the other costs yet. So is it?
So, Mayor, members of the council, when we bring back the preliminary discussion, and this might help you kind of wrap your arms around all the different decisions that you're going to have to make for the 2020 budget process. When we bring that preliminary budget to you, what we plan to do is say, you've made a commitment to your residents to provide a certain level of services. So we're going to bring you back a budget that says, we believe to deliver the services that residents are receiving today, this is what it's going to cost. We've also we'll have adopted our strategic plan that we just went through that planning session, and we came up with a work plan, and that year one has a number of items that some of them have funding implications to that. So what will it take to deliver current services? What is it going to take to deliver that year one work plan to step us towards our strategic goals? And then all these other things that have come up through the year that we want to fund. And so you can give us some direction and feedback, because we'll give you a big number. If you want to do everything, this is what it's going to be. But if we want to prioritize and do something, this is the trajectory that we're on. It's an opportunity for you to give us some feedback right out the gate. So when we bring back max tax to you in August as a discussion, that we've got some guidance going into that. And throughout each step of the budget process, you'll be giving us input and feedback. So we're hitting those policies and those service levels that you want to set for the residents and the taxpayers in the community. So August, we would have more, and as of course, as we get further and further into the year, we have better and better numbers. We've dug in a little bit deeper. We've got more estimates. We're looking at all sorts of different information that's coming from the state, from the county. And as we step through the year, we get better and better estimates. So we'll bring that max tax to you in August for some more refinement and discussion. You adopt your max tax, so it can't go up from there, but the levy can go down. And then we would continue to do our deep dives and bring back the CIP and bring back more information. We have really great discussion in November before you adopt that final proposed budget, or that final budget in December.
So one final quick point for the council. We've talked about potentially doing a yard waste temporary facility. That's another item that we haven't figured out yet. We also have talked about trying to fund potentially one trail connection, and we haven't talked about that either. So we've got all these things we've talked about. Then back on the revenue side, I think we've got TIF money we now know of a certain amount, $385,000 too. We've got to do something with that. This is why I'm thinking if we get to June, we can at least have a list of all of these projects we talked about and a list of all these funding sources, and I think we can make a much better informed decision at that time. So I want to keep us on schedule for the council meeting, but I want all of the council members, if you would please, final comments, and let's be brief so we can take a short recess and then we go back to the council meeting. Go ahead.
For this item in front of us, is it helpful to you, to staff, if we eliminate, because I think there's a couple of options on here that I am not interested in pursuing. So if we can eliminate a couple of those options, would that be helpful to you?
That would be helpful for staff, yes.
So that being said, I think we should, my opinion is eliminate option 1 and option 5.
I agree.
I agree.
Can we go back to the chart? We've already got 3.
I like number 3.
Option 5, land purchase and phase 1 construction only.
Trish, the one that showed all 5 options with the green and red boxes. Yep, there it is.
Oh, I got to go this way.
There you go. There we go. Delete 1 and 5. Is that what I heard?
Yeah. And,
Makes sense.
yeah, I gotta tell you,
Just real quick on
I like number 3.
Well, we're not going to pick one now. Let's just eliminate 1 and 5. There's a consensus on the council for that. Is there any elimination of any of the others? It sounds like just 1 and 5. So concentrate on 2, 3, and 4.
We can certainly do that. And just, it would help us if you have any undergrounding projects that you're interested in or want us to get cost estimates on, that would help us
I'd like
as
to
well.
say, we can't take our eyes off the ball of this franchise fee issue. So we should really, strategically, we said we wanted to get going on the 13 acres within 2 years, which means we're going to need to underground Steger from where we sit underground to the new
Downtown west.
right, and then we're going to have to underground downtown west. So those numbers, we should at least get, I hate to use the word ballpark, but we should have some kind of order of magnitude on what the undergrounding will be for that, because strategically, we said we were going to do something in 2 years. So,
That's very helpful.
Valid point. Any other final comments? No?
Just one quick question, just for that for the balance due on the 1.7 that we bonded, is there any restrictions on those dollars to use them for parks?
There are restrictions on those dollars because your expenditures have to be consistent with what you adopted in your resolution. And we did confirm with bond counsel that park expenses, this particular project, would be an expense that could be used for that.
Okay. Council, any final comments? All right, I move we adjourn the workshop, take a brief recess, and then start the council meeting. Any objections? Hearing none, we're going to adjourn the workshop. We'll reconvene in 5 minutes. I call to order the 13 May 2019 meeting of the Victoria City Council. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I move we adopt the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, Dana, gotcha. Not by design,
Really
but.
fast, okay. And I have to grab the number.
8C.
8C we need to pull. And we would like to recommend delaying to a future date to be determined. So staff can have some additional conversations with developers. Some things came up just recently, and we just want some more time to work through the developers, so we'd like to pull that item.
That was for the corridor study.
The corridor study, correct.
Okay.
Dana, any other items?
That's it.
Council, any adjustments to the agenda?
Done.
Then I move we adopt an amended agenda that drops out item 8C. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the adopted agendas, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. The adopted agenda is passed. So next up, open forum. I have one slip. Lance?
I'll be quick.
Name and address for the record, please.
Lance Fisher, 6870 Rolling Acres Road. Reason I'm here, I've been waiting for, I think 30 years now for the connection of the trail that runs up the east side of Rolling Acres Road is missing about just a little under 1,000 feet. It's a bad place for people to bike. If you connect that, that brings connection to the old railway trail along with the city park up on across Highway 7 and provides a means for bicycles and pedestrians to traverse County Road 13 without getting run over. I believe there is a relatively economical way to do this, and that is there is basically a ditch where the trail could go. If you put a culvert in the ditch and put a couple catch basins in alongside the road and put a trail over the top of it, you'd be done, and it wouldn't hardly cost a thing.
Thank you. The council's not going to discuss that
I don't
tonight.
expect you to discuss this. I just want to bring this to your attention and see if you could get on this at some time in the future.
Not a problem. Council, without objection, Dana, can we have Ann look at that and get back to us with any input she has on that?
You can do that.
Council, without objection? All right. Is there anybody else that would like to address the council? Come on up. Name and address for the record, please.
My name's Jim Moss, 1310 Wintergreen Lane. Members of council, mayor, I was at the last meeting regarding yard waste, and I noticed that it's not on the agenda for this meeting. After further research, I'm even more confused now because I went to the city website, and on the city website, I went to the website. In the search bar, I typed in, "Can I burn leaves?" It took me to the web page, and here's what it says. No, leaves are not allowed to be burnt, even if they are in a recreation fire. The City of Victoria offers composting services in the spring and fall to dispose of leaves. Burning of leaves produces noxious smoke, which can create a health hazard and is a nuisance to your neighbors. So now I'm really confused. You take away the facility. It's on the website that you've got a facility. Since our last meeting, another insert into the paper, even though it's Chan, it's the city paper. It's a little late for spring, but I'm just here to beg you to give this some strong consideration and help out the residents of the city. I know there's a lot of other things you're looking for, fee increases and tax increases, and this should not be a hard one. And if there's something I can do, please ask for help. I'm happy to dig in. But I think it would be for the benefit of most city residents, especially for those that maybe they don't have the ability to pay for a lot of this. Do something a little more convenient locally instead of having to haul the leaves out to Hutchinson or wherever that is. So I appreciate your consideration and your time.
Thank you, Jim. Jim, can you get that information and get that to Dana so that we can look and find out where that is? You don't have to do it now.
Sure.
But get that information
Sure.
because if the city site says that, we need to get that fixed.
Website, so.
Mayor, members of the council, if I may, just for the public's edification and to Mr. Moss's point, thank you for bringing this to our attention, Mr. Moss. We have recently gone through an upgrade and transition migration to a new platform for our website, and this was an oversight here. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. I'll look for an email from you, and we'll get that corrected right away.
And I guess a question: I don't understand what's wrong with burning leaves?
I don't know, Dana. Can you look at this?
I'll look at Mr. Moss. We can. I'll work with you to address those questions.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Jim. Another hand?
Yes.
Come on up.
Oh, that's Mr. Johnson. He's
Am I later on the agenda?
Yeah, visitor presentation.
Yes, that's me.
We're not there yet. I'll call you up.
Okay.
Sorry.
He's ready. He's ready.
It won't be long, I promise. Anyone else? Okay, let's move to the consent agenda then. I move we adopt the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. I want to pull item D. Anybody in the audience or council, Dana, are we going to pull any other item?
None from staff.
Okay. I move that we we adopt the amended consent agenda to include all items except for item D. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of adopting the amended consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The consent agenda is adopted. We'll take item D right now. I wanted to pull this just very, very briefly to let the public know what Dana, Trish, and Cindy have done in the last few weeks. I think they've been digging in and looking at a lot of different things. This is an example of some of the things that they're finding. And I think this is absolutely excellent work. And the council, when we selected Dana to be our city manager, this is exactly the kind of performance that I think we can all be proud of. And Dana, if you would please, it's easy for me to say that without the public knowing what's going on. Dana, if you would, for the team, would you please explain to the public what happened here with this particular one?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So it's part of our culture here to have continuous improvement. And one of the things, as public servants, we take our fiduciary responsibility to the public very seriously. And having that culture of continuous improvement is something that we continually strive for. So when you all set your budget and set that levy, we don't try to spend every last minute, up to every last dollar of that. We're always looking for ways to be more efficient, to deliver the services more efficient, and find those cost savings throughout the year. And this is just one of those examples. So you had authorized earlier in the year, had authorized us to go out for an RFP, request for proposals for services for our copier lease. And through that, we were able to get competitive pricing, but also had an opportunity to renegotiate. We had 2 separate leases, but to restructure and renegotiate our second lease to combine them into one for some cost savings. And the cost savings here is actually 41% over what we're paying today.
So, thank you. That's the kind of cost-cutting measures that Dana and the team are looking for and finding in the budgets. And these, of course, pay us back year over year because of what is that, a 3-year or 4-year contract?
We did a 4-year contract.
4-year contract. So it's not a huge amount of money, but you do this 10 times and it starts to add up and it starts to pay for other things that we need to pay for. So thank you, Dana. With that, I move that we approve item 4D.
How about I authorize staff to sign a purchase order and enter into a lease agreement with Marco for the City Hall and Victoria Rec Center copy machines.
I'll second that. The discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. That is adopted. Visitor presentation. Okay.
Now, Braden.
The first item, sorry, Braden, the first item is actually Tour de Tonka.
I promise I'll be quick.
I'd like to remind the presenters that we've allocated 10 minutes, so.
I have your swag for the year.
Oh, there you go.
Good swag.
Yeah, it's always, something special. So the one part for one maybe.
Flight.
She didn't bring swag.
Thanks. I'll start talking while I go around. So, Tour de Tonka by the numbers. Can anyone guess what 420 is?
I'm sorry, can I get you to name and position for the record? Thank you.
Thank you.
Separate.
Thank you.
Okay,
We use them
officially
now?
for the record, yes, please. Get comfortable, I promise. Yes, does it feel good? They're nice and soft, I do think they're soft. My name is Molly Bonneman, and I am the program director for adult programs with Minnetonka Community Ed. In relationship to Tour de Tonka, I am the rest stop queen. It's my official title. I don't know if Tim's approved it yet. So Tour de Tonka by the numbers. Can anyone guess what 420 is?
Miles.
Yes, miles that we covered. Nice job. I
Give her the
like
gold
it.
star.
Would you like a gold star? Would you like an additional pillow? 54. What do you think that might be? It is the number of jerseys we sold last year. 1.
Winner.
Everyone is a winner who rides Tour de Tonka. It is a ride, not a race, remember. No, 1 is one cancellation that we've had to have due to weather, which unfortunately was last year. But 1 in 13 is not a bad record. So
13, number of times you've done this?
no, 13 is the number of rest stops, believe that. And 74 is the number of, I want to make sure I get this right. I want to say it's cities that we go through, but I just want to make sure I say it right. Counties in Minnesota that riders have come from. So we stretch far and wide for people that come in. I actually spoke to someone who was from Ireland one year, and he said, I just got in. Where do I go? I was like, wow, you're a dedicated cyclist. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we're always looking for volunteers. The chances are that someone you know has ridden in our ride. And we have great opportunities from the rest stop perspective. If you own a small business or would like to be a host of a rest stop, we always invite you to come and do that. And it's simply a great way to get your name out if you just provide us with 8 volunteers. And we also just have places along the route for people to help direct traffic and make sure that this is a very safe ride. Safety is our number one priority, which is why we had to make the decision last year to cancel. It just wasn't going to be safe for people out on the roads. So as you can see, we are really shooting for these states that we haven't hit yet, but we are getting close to turning this entire United States green. I'm not sure who's going to come from Hawaii. I feel like they might have some better terrain, but we'll see. I'm hoping that maybe one of you knows someone who wants to come and visit you at that time. Next slide, please. Thank you. These are the counties that we visit. 74, as you said, were the numbers. It's amazing how far and wide people come from and how much this ride is enjoyed by people. Once they come, they usually come again and again and again. So it's really great. These are the top 10 communities for 2018. And again, because we weren't able to go last year, these people didn't ride, but they were registered. So you can see that Minnetonka comes in at the top. Minneapolis, Eden Prairie, Plymouth, Chan, Excelsior, Wayzata, Maple Grove, Edina, and Chaska. And then the next slide will show you the top 11 to 20. And then the next slide will show you the age breakdown. So it's an interesting, the main group that really ride with us are kind of that 30 to 70, which is great. We do have a lot of families that ride, and they ride together. And it's surprising. You think, oh, they would just do the 16 milers, but they really reach for the stars. And 2 years ago, we had 2 boys who were, I want to say they were 10. They might have been a little bit older, who rode 100 miles together. Wow. And we followed them the entire time taking pictures because they were just amazing. They are buddies who ride bikes together, and so they decided to take on this task. It was really cool. We have had people between the ages of 80 and 89, which is also really amazing to see them go. So the thing that is most impressive about Tour de Tonka is that it is, as I said, a ride, not a race. And so it's accessible to anybody who just really wants to try something new. And I think if someone strives to do a century ride, this is a really great way to do it for a first time. And it's also something that if you're a century rider, they ride just to get the miles in because it's a good ride. It's an easy ride. Next slide, please. We support the ICA food shelf. Our annual donations from Tour de Tonka, about $3,000. The donations from rider registration is $4,000. Same day donations, Ron Camps, in this picture, many may have even met Ron Camps. It's surprising. He's one of those, he's probably more popular than Kevin Bacon, 6 degrees of separation. I feel like I talk to somebody like, oh, I know Ron Camps. He has a fishbowl, and people put money in it every year. We're up to $645. We donated 4 pounds of food. And last year, with our cancellation, a lot of what had been purchased could not be returned because it was perishable, so it went directly to the ICA food shelf. And what couldn't go there, we gave through organizations like Loaves and Fishes. We had some food prepared, so they gave it out to the homeless. So we were able to at least give away what we couldn't use, which was really heartbreaking that we were not going to have the ride, but heartwarming that nothing went to waste. In 2019, we will be traveling through all of these cities. So as I said, you probably know someone who lives in one of these cities that maybe wants to stand outside of their house and go, this way. Next slide, please. These are the police and fire departments that help us. This event could not take place without the support of the cities and without support of the police and the fire departments. It is amazing how many people are out on the road that maybe have never been out on the road before. And if you ride a bike, you know that that's not exactly the safest thing. And so we've got such wonderful support from our police and fire departments. This year, we're going to have a 16, a 30, a 36, a 48, 57, 62, 71, and 100-mile ride. Each of these have rest stops, which is fabulous. And if you've ever ridden, you know that you might gain weight while you do this ride because we give you so much food. So next, please. This is our registration history, and you can see it's very it follows a trend, so we can see when things happen. We usually have a jump right at early bird registration, which ended recently, and then we see a nice jump around the 4th of July, mostly because people are like, yeah, I think I can commit to something in a month. It's hard sometimes to make that commitment now, as we all know. These are the rides. These are all of them posed on a map, and so you can see we go really far west. Norwood Young America is our halfway stop, and if you've never been to Norwood Young America, please go. It is such a lovely town with really lovely people. So that's a really great rest stop. It's where they stop and hang out, and so we go just about everywhere. These are our rest stops. So every rest stop has food galore. We have music at every rest stop. And bikers stop, they have a snack, they talk to each other about their experience. It's not very often that people buzz through a rest stop. The only one that they might shoot through would be the Orono one, because that's the first of the 100-mile ride. So they're like, I probably shouldn't stop yet. Next, please. These are our major sponsors. On the pillows, you'll see Domino's. United Healthcare, Maple Grove Cycling has been so wonderful to work with, along with Bridgewater Bank and Park Dental. Boyer Building, they build the scaffolding at the finish line. It is incredible how they transform the parking lot of Minnetonka High School. You can hardly even believe it's a school. There's just such a cool vibe and kind of a small city happening for the start and the finish. Subaru, Cub, and Invicta. Invicta loves to give us really great stuff, so it's pretty fun. And then our safety sponsors are Twin City Orthopedics and North Memorial Health. We have ambulances, and we have, they call them gators, in different places, just to make sure that if someone does get hurt, we can respond as fast as possible. These are our shirts this year. I really like them. So every rider that registers gets a shirt. They're very nice, lightweight. So as I said, we'd love to have you either as a volunteer or to participate. The ride is on Saturday, August 3rd, 2019. It's going to be a beautiful, bright, sunny day, about 80 degrees. Do you have any questions for me?
Council?
No, do they come through Victoria?
I really should have been able to answer that right off the top of my head.
But that's Volksfest.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
I think they...
Bavaria Road.
Yeah.
Oh, Bavaria? Okay.
They come right through here, and this ride is the 57-mile ride.
Okay. You might want to detour
All right. Thank you
Just
very
ride
much.
them right through downtown.
Yeah, because, we've got Volksfest that same day.
What do you have?
Volksfest, it's our festival.
Oh, very cool.
Town festival. So,
Cool. Well, we'll put that on our information that's happening.
Yeah.
Great event. Thank you very
Yep,
much.
and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have Heidi Hawks. Okay, I was going to say Hoax, and I knew that wasn't right. And Patricia Jones?
Everybody says it wrong. Good Dutch name. Good Dutch name. I'm Heidi Hawks, Library Director of Carver County Library System. And Mr. Mayor, council members, I am excited to be here to talk to you about value. Value that you get from your library. Downstairs, if we could go to the next slide. Downstairs, you have the beautiful Victoria Library in this lovely, lovely building. As you walk into the Victoria Library the next time, what I want you to do is stop for a moment and imagine libraries all across the country, because many of these libraries, when you walk in the door, what you see is what you get. But when you walk into the door of your Victoria Library, what you see is just the beginning of what you get. And that is because the Victoria Library is one of our Carver County libraries. If you go to the next slide, our Carver County has 6 full-service libraries and 4 express libraries within it that give you access to many, many books, because we transport those books between the libraries for all the people of the county to be able to enjoy, as well as movies, as well as books on CD, music, all kinds of things. The next slide, please. But in addition, we are part of a regional library system. And because we're a part of a regional library system, the regional library actually purchases materials for us, such as e-books, databases and so on, and gives us money for programming, all to make your library more exciting, to give educational experiences to many, many people, and to bring smiles, to bring value to those people. You'll notice on your annual report, the back of your annual report, there are statistics that we had for this past year. I won't go through those. I'll let you read them yourself. Statistics are one way we can talk about value, but if you look on the inside, you see the value in the faces of all these children, of all these adults. And while these are faces from across the county, you want to see the faces that are right here in Victoria, don't you? I'm sure you do. So for that, I'm going to turn it over to our branch manager, Patrick Jones.
Hi, Patrick Jones, branch manager for Chanhassen and the Victoria Library. What you have downstairs, if you go to the next 2 slides, is a youth magnet. 75% of the books that circulate, the materials that circulate out of the library downstairs are for kids. And that is pretty amazing. It's the highest of any library I've ever worked in. And to get those, we have new library card registrations. There were over 400 new library cards issued this past year. One of the reasons it's a youth magnet is once the kids get cards, they want to come and enjoy them. And the way they do that is through story time. Over 3,000 people attend story time this past year. The reason people come to libraries, we believe, is simply because they're a community and they want to connect. And they connect through our collections, but they also connect through lots of programming. For example, up here we had the author Stan Tequila, which was actually sponsored by the Friends of the Victoria Library. We do twice weekly story times. And I just want to blow through these really quickly so you can keep up with me. Okay. You can. Sometimes the story times comes with crafts. Sometimes the story time comes with people from the outside, such as the Victoria Fire Department, or with we had the master gardeners come in for garden story time. We're unique in that we are the technology branch, so downstairs is a 3D printer. So we have new school stuff, but then we also went old school with Dads Do Hair, which was a nice program that we did. One of the things we try to do in all our programs is make them fun yet educational. So the Sing, Play, Learn program from McPhail is a really good example of that. Or sometimes it's just fun like the summer dance party. We do things like the Great American Sing-Along. We had concerts for kids. We did, you mentioned Volksfest. We were out there doing a craft last year during that. And then we ended up the whole year with lots of stuff in the summer. You'll see many photos if you do some of this Jurassic World party. Go to the next couple. You'll notice that a lot of them are taking place up here in the city council chambers. So lots of things going on up here during the summer. We had 6 performers come along. We had a Great American Sing-Along. We had concerts. We had a program for Volkscraft, for Volksfest, as I mentioned. And then finally, we ended the year with a new Noon Year's Day celebration where everyone had a chance to dance and have balloons fall on their head. Well, maybe it's not balloons you want to fall on your head, but my guess is there's something you do want to happen and your library can be part of it. So I'll end with a good note and a sad note. The good note is we had a really good year at Victoria, as you see from those pictures and you see from those stats. The bad news is the person who made that happen, Jody, is getting promoted. So she's going to be the new branch manager of the Chaska Branch Library. So we put today in the ad and the requisition for the new Youth Services Librarian, which we hope to have filled very soon. But we're sad to see Jody go because she did a lot of good pictures and her face is over most of these slides. Any questions for Heidi or I?
Council?
The great job, right? I didn't realize you had so many programs going on, and a lot of those pictures showed that library full of people, right? Both adults and kids. Great job. Just wonderful.
Thank you. The council, any other comments?
Just thank you.
Yeah.
Good work. Thank you both very much. Thank you. Brandon, it's your turn.
I'm just kidding.
All right. Mayor, Council, my name is Braden Johnson. I live at 1370 Wintergreen Lane, Victoria, so I'm a resident. I have been for the last 15 years. I'm a senior at Chanhassen High School, and I have been privileged with the last few weeks. I've been, last month and a half now, and I have been researching affordable housing in the city of Victoria, inspired by, it started with a broad question of how do we improve the community of Victoria, and I found that increasing affordable housing for our city would be the best way to achieve that. So I'd like to start off and just address the city's position on the next slide. So from what I found on Victoria's website, their mission is pretty clearly stated. I did a little bit of cutting, and the two main takeaways that I found were diverse housing supports economic development by creating a sustainable community where people of all walks of life can choose to live regardless of where they live or where they are in their life cycle. And then just a little ways down, businesses need employees and employees need housing. Having diverse housing also helps to ensure a strong local economy. We're looking at this life cycle housing where people of my generation who are new to the labor force can access Victoria, whereas people who are beginning to retire, downsizing, still have a place to downsize in Victoria. That's what we're looking at here. And what I found and what I was somewhat disappointed with is that Victoria is taking the position of, I found this from the Information Comprehensive Plan, it's the preservation of Victoria's naturally occurring affordable housing, including apartments. Including apartments is essentially nothing because there is no affordable housing in the form of multifamily units or even at all in the city of Victoria. And I find that particularly disturbing as we look to the demand in Victoria. So looking to the next slide. In 2015, the Minnesota Housing Partnership estimated that for every 100 extremely low-income renters in Carver County, there are only 39 affordable and available units. And of the 3,002 residential building permits issued from 2009 to 2014, only 10% were in multifamily buildings, the housing type most likely to be affordable to renters. And pairing this to Victoria, the average cost, which I can imagine we're all fairly familiar with, is somewhere between $415,000 to $430,000. I found it at $423,000. And I'm just looking to like even the total housing units in the graphic to the right. Almost everything is single family units in Victoria. I'm looking at that 80.8% figure. So there's a complete lack of affordable housing. And continuing off that in the next slide, specific or like breaking down the demographics of this 434 number that was talked previously. So 235 fall at this average median income of or below that 30%. 31 to 50% is 150 units that are necessary. 51% to 80% of average median income is 49%. And so that just kind of shows us a little bit about the breakdown. On top of that, I was looking at the Carver County, the CDA website. And there was significant talk, and I've looked at the 13 acres plan, and there's talk of elder development and making sure there's affordable housing for elders, which is important, undeniably. But I'm looking at general family. This is what the majority of my project is looking at because that directly impacts the commercial development of Victoria. It affects public transit, something that Victoria already lacks. And so while 52.5% of the need, according to the CDA website, is for seniors or people 55 or older, there's this undeniable 47.5% of demand that is for general family, for general households. And that's imperative that it's addressed because it's not only lacking in Victoria, but it's lacking in Carver County. And this is something that Victoria can be a leader in, taking a step forward and making sure that there is a housing units available for all members of our community, regardless of the income that they earn. And so my proposal is that it would be a reformation of the view of the 13 acres lot that's being developed on the next slide. Oh yeah, perfect. So it would essentially, as I mentioned earlier, it would encourage public transportation in Victoria because these are low-income earners or lower-income earners, but just generally people who are working about Carver County or in the nearby area that would perhaps attract public transportation to Victoria, which is an incredible resource for Victoria to have. And it would also meet the demand for affordable housing units in Victoria. I mean, this could be any, I think in many cases too, like my teachers at Chanhassen High School, oftentimes they don't live in this community because it's not affordable for the people who are here. And I think that's a pretty dire concern that I think is shared amongst the council. And so In order to finance this, one option that the two ladies from the CDA briefly touched on this, but it would be on the next slide, the Community Development Block Grant. And so it's a state, it's a federal grant that can be that's issued through the state and also the county, and so it can be used for in a variety of ways. But 70% of the grant has to go towards low, moderate income earners. And then one of the three criteria must exist in order for it to be meeting of the objectives. So it benefits low and moderate income persons. So this is looking at your general family sort of situation and affordable housing, or prevention or elimination of slums or blight, and addresses community development needs due to existing conditions that pose a serious and immediate threat or to the health or welfare of the community, which other funding is not available. And that's just kind of where I leave off here. Are there any questions that I can help answer? Any concerns that I can ameliorate?
Well, first, Braden, thank you. I said Brendan, but it's
No,
Braden.
yeah, you're all good.
All right. Good presentation. Council? Questions, comments?
Are you a senior
I am.
at Chanhassen? Are you going to college? What's your
Yes.
major after high school?
I'm going to attend the University of Minnesota. I'll participate in their honors program, and I will study geography and perhaps global studies. I don't know. I've also kind of awakened an interest in local politics too, so maybe that might be on the agenda.
Pursue that. We need good people like you. Thank you for that. Good luck. I wish you luck.
Yeah, thank you.
What course was this for?
This is for 21st century issues, and it's kind of a broad sort of course. I could pursue anything from the relationship of the United States and Iran to anything like local politics, as I'm doing here. So it's kind of a broad thing, and it's to meet a capstone requirement, which is community involved work.
I think you highlighted something that people don't talk about much in Victoria.
Yeah.
But probably should be talked about more.
Mhm.
So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Braden, nice presentation. Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with any cities that have received this particular block grant?
Yeah, so this block grant, as was mentioned by the CDA, has existed in Watertown. Based off the criteria, I mean, while precedent is important, yes, I think Victoria well meets the criteria of this because of the evident demand for affordable housing, which is a low moderate income earners piece, and then as long as it benefits these people, the city of Victoria could qualify for this as long as a multifamily unit is being developed that very overtly demonstrates that it benefits low-income earners. It benefits this idea of life cycle housing. It makes sure that people who are working in Victoria or neighboring communities can take residence in Victoria, and we can all share this beautiful city together.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great job.
Okay.
Next up, we have a public hearing.
I just put that there just in case.
That's a placeholder? Okay, so there is no public hearing. In that case, let's move on to 7A. The first item is downtown ADA improvements. Kara, this is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. This is me. And perhaps Ann, depending on where the questions might go. But the City Council had previously authorized some preliminary engineering work to evaluate the conditions downtown. So to essentially do an audit of our existing pedestrian system to look at ADA compliance. As anybody who's spent any time downtown would know, there are areas that are not in great condition in terms of tripping hazards being created. And then we also have outdated systems that don't meet current ADA compliance requirements. So the council had previously seen the memo that's included in the staff report in a draft format. There were no significant changes, but it was created or updated to be a final format. But the first step for staff was to evaluate all the different projects that existed potentially within the downtown area and come back with a recommendation of an area for where to start. So Staff spent some time reviewing conditions and would recommend that we move forward with project area number 1, outlined in blue here. So it's really the Victoria Drive, Tower Boulevard, and Highway 5 section that we would be focusing on in the first project. So if the council wishes to move forward with potentially constructing some repairs this year, we would need to get moving with preliminary design fairly quickly. If the council authorizes this additional work tonight, Bolton Mink would prepare plans and specs, and then we would go get actual quotes from contractors to do the work, and then would be presenting those quotes to the council for consideration of moving forward with yet this construction season. And if we are to move ahead, the approximate cost for the design phase services is $15,000 for the Project 1 area. And with that, I'll stop, and Ann or I will answer any questions.
Thank you, council. Questions?
I have one. Is
Go
this
ahead.
just fixing what we have, or is this bringing us up to code in that block?
It would repair what needs to be repaired, but also bring address non-compliance issues within that area.
So then that would be finished.
Correct.
And then we could go to the next one.
Correct.
All right, let me hold council comments for a second. Let's-
Yes, oh,
Just for a second, let's do this the right way. I move we authorize Bolton and Mink, Inc. to provide design phase services in an approximate amount of $15,020 for project number 1 for the downtown sidewalk/ADA improvements. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you for the second. Now discussion.
discussion is this 15,000 in the budget?
The CIP this year includes, I should have pulled this out of my head, but I had it in my head before I opened it. The CIP includes $150,000 for this project, which in the CIP it's listed to be funded using available TIF funds. The conversation that staff has had is that by the time we get to July and have the design work complete, you all will have had those broader conversations about these lists of projects and priorities to then be able to have that information before you would have to make a decision to actually implement that phase 1
So
project.
I'd like to restate the question. Where is the cash?
Does anybody know?
The CIP is indicating that you would be using the available TIF funds from TIF District 3 for this project.
Is that the one that has like $485,000 or something? Trish's.
I don't know what the exact number, but there is fund balance available to use
So there's a
that.
TIF,
It's
residual
TIF
TIF
funds.
balance out there.
I think that's what it is.
TIF
And I
that
think
was generated downtown.
The conversations, if I'm recalling correctly, and Ms. Pollock can correct me later if I'm wrong, but staff chose that as a potential option because of the connection. The TIF is generated downtown because of the connection to downtown that
Right.
was.
So the cash is there right now, or it'll come in
Correct.
the next year?
Yeah.
Something like that.
And we expect this project 1 to be quite a bit less than the $150,000 that's in the budget. But it's a little bit difficult to estimate what the costs are. So the value in getting those quotes back is you would have an actual number to make a decision on for how to move forward with those first phase. The other thing I should note is that staff did conclude that it made more sense to phase the work over a period of a couple of years versus trying to disrupt all of downtown at once by trying to do all the repairs at one time.
Let me make sure I understand this. Is this design study for all of downtown, or is it just one segment?
Just the phase 1 segment.
All right, is there any cost advantage to doing the entire downtown at once with one study and then we can just take pieces off as we want?
So this would produce plans and specifications. So you really want that plan and specification package to equate with what you're actually hiring at that time. So you have a contractor providing apples to apples bids as they provide bids. Certainly the work that comes out of that process could be parts of that could be reused on the next couple of projects in terms of detail plates or other parts of the plan set.
So what I heard you tell me is there's no benefit to doing the study for all of downtown and doing it once, that we should take it in pieces here.
Yeah, for doing the construction, if you're going to phase the construction, you would want to do this work in the phases that you would be bidding in.
Right. Those surveys, that seems to me, 15,000, how many different phases do we have down here?
3.
So it's only 3 phases. So if it's 15,000 each time, it's 45,000 for engineering studies, basically?
Yeah,
So it's 15%, is that normal?
roughly. Yeah, I mean, till we know what the actual project costs are, it's a little, the 150, I think we were at 200,000 in their original reports, but this is actual preparation of construction documents. So, all the pages of the plan set, the big spec book for all the details, which I forgot to note this book. So in the conversation we were having about how challenging some of this ADA compliance stuff is, one of our new staff members attended an ADA compliance training for designing, actually just for construction. It was an 8-hour class, and this was all the materials that they got tested on.
Oh, they got tested on that?
Yeah.
And they have it memorized now?
Yeah, I'm gonna quiz them.
Yeah, okay.
I feel good about that.
Council, further questions, comments?
Kara, you're looking at both sides of Tower Boulevard, both the north and the south?
Yes. Well, the north side has been rebuilt now, so it's just the
Right.
south side.
Is there a sidewalk along the Gannon property there?
Yes, on the north side.
And you're looking,
Sorry, I was picturing by Winchester and Rye. The north side by Winchester and Rye has all been
Right.
rebuilt except for the ped ramps at the corner of the alley, and an aerial would help. Jumpy mouse. So this intersection all has non-compliant pedestrian ramps. So all of this would be looked at, as well as the sidewalk along the Gannon building, and then the sidewalk along School of the Wise, and then all the way down here, and then along Highway 5 as well, is all included in that first project area.
okay.
All right, council, any further comments, questions? If not, we've got a valid motion. I'm sorry, anything else? If not, we've got this valid motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Kara. Next item is 7B, adopt revised council meeting agenda format and council meeting policy. Dana, this is yours.
What are you looking for, Dana?
The
Packet?
You can do that. There.
7B, up.
There. Oh, heck.
Sorry.
There you go.
I am not sure why this is not, okay. Well, I had a PowerPoint presentation to kind of walk you through, but I will, just for the sake of time, we'll move through this pretty quickly. We've talked about this at our strategic planning session, and what this item is to adopt the revised council meeting agenda format, as well as the related council meeting rules policy. And this came out of our strategic planning discussion, as well as some of these things I've covered with you in our individual meetings, one-on-one. But we thought it would be a good idea to bring this forward so public understands what we're doing, or what we're attempting to do, and why we're doing that. So our current agenda has 15 different agenda categories, and I won't read them all to you, but you can see basically what's on your screen right now. There's a number of different ways, and staff spend a lot of time on the front end trying to figure out where do these things fall on those items where you have to take individual or independent council action on things. So why are we looking at changing our agenda format? Transparency, efficiency, and then flexibility. So we want to improve the flow and the ease of following the public following the agenda for the public. Efficiency, we want to streamline that process, that creation process for staff. We estimate that by doing this, it'll save a couple hours just by changing the agenda format every time we compile an agenda for staff. And then flexibility. So right now, you can see our policy that you all have adopted back in 2014 actually dictates how this is going to be laid out. And so we have very little flexibility from a staff perspective to put agenda items based on public interest in the order where we think they should go. We have to follow this format. So the way that we're going to propose this allows us some flexibility to place items on the agenda where we believe we have the most public interest on something, and if we're having a crowd here to speak or talk to something, then we would have that flexibility to respond to that on the front end and not necessarily take up meeting time to do that. Oops, sorry.
Oops, was I not to do?
That was me. If you.
No, I did that.
That was Cindy. We're fighting over the mouse.
No fighting over the mouse.
They gave me a mouse tonight. So the proposed agenda format is going to go from 15 categories to 9, and I'll briefly go through them. So call to order, Pledge of Allegiance, that remains the same.
Dana, I'm sorry to interrupt. Would it be easier for the people at home to see if we bring it up? Yeah, thank you.
If you want, it'll take me 2 seconds to find your PowerPoint, if
Sure.
that would be helpful.
If you're-
I located it offline, so I know where to get it.
Thank you, Kara.
While you talk.
So I'll just continue to go through, and then we'll add in. Announcements went from the last item, and we moved that up front. That would be things like our upcoming meetings, so we can catch that on the front end. Open forum, what we're proposing is that we combine and broaden the definition of open forum to include the visitor's presentation.
I like that.
What page do you want?
Right here. Doo-doo-doo. And then we would continue to go into adopt the final agenda. We do that right now, so that wouldn't change. Consent agenda, we also have that. That would not change. Regular agenda, this is where, and roundtable and reports, this is where we're going to be asking for some change, and I'll go through that when I back up here. So open forum, as I just mentioned, combines that open forum as it stands today along with the visitor's presentation. It's an opportunity for the public to comment on items of public interest or issues, so items that are not on the printed agenda and are not in application process at City Hall. So 10 minutes are set aside, just like we saw today, at each meeting, and then we would encourage people per the policy to contact our city clerk in advance so we can be prepared for that. And then, Mayor, you would open the floor, if time permits, to any unscheduled visitors. So no change really, except for they're combined. And then no council action should be expected. Consent agenda, routine, administrative, non-controversial items, and previous guidance that you have given us. And in the policy, I did add some examples, some consent agenda items, examples that would guidelines that would represent these regular agenda. So essentially what this does is, you could see we've got right now new business, old business, finance, a number of different things, public hearing, and this would combine everything into one category called regular meeting. And the purpose for that is you're taking independent action on each of those items. So instead of separating it out, and then this is where we get that flexibility, we can take that public hearing and put it up front, or if we know people are going to be here and are interested in a specific topic, we can put that toward the front of the meeting on the front end and not have to take council time to do that. Roundtable, this is something that we're proposing as being something new for the agenda. And the purpose of this is to discuss an item not on a printed agenda or planned as a future agenda item. So the discussion will generally focus on whether council will direct staff to spend time researching information, bringing it back, resources, budget authorization to expend some funds to do some research, or expend resources to bring information back to you. So staff will not spend time preparing a staff report for a roundtable. An example would be the yard waste discussion that we just had recently, to say, hey, we're hearing from the public that there may be interest in looking at this. Can we direct staff to spend time to research this issue and bring us back some options? That would be an example of a roundtable.
And that's really the focus of the roundtable, is to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
And then reports, city manager and staff reports, and then council reports right now. That would they're separate items, and we propose that those would be combined. This is just a mock-up of what the agenda would look like, a little bit different, a little bit cleaner than what it is now. And then in your agenda packet, there was staff report that detailed all of this, as well as a revised or red line policy that reflects the information I just covered here tonight, and then gave some of those consent agenda guidelines. And so what we're asking is to have council authorize staff to amend the council meeting agenda format as we just presented, and to adopt the revised council meeting rules policy as drafted.
Okay, so I move we authorize staff to amend the council meeting agenda format and adopt the revised council meeting rules policy as drafted by staff. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you for the second. Discussion.
Like it.
Discussion is that we're missing a couple of key pieces.
Okay.
This is a procedure, a policy. It says adopt council meeting rules policy. One of the things that's missing from here, and to me it's integral, is there should be protocol for the presider and protocols for the council members. In other words, how do we go about having this meeting? What are the basic pieces of what the presider is doing? What are the basic pieces of what the council is doing? When should the different people be speaking? How are motions originated and garnered? So the whole procedure of how we go about the meeting, we've laid out the steps, how we set up the agenda, when we change the agenda, but we haven't got a place where we're actually talking about is how is the meeting supposed to flow? Who's supposed to be doing what? And when? And how? So to me, this policy is somebody in 2014 put it together probably fairly hastily, but to me, it's missing the core pieces, the protocol for the meeting itself.
What, should we simply just say Robert's Rules of Order dictates that? Because anybody can make a motion and second it.
That's correct, but how is the recommended protocol that we would like to have? So there's a range, it's a continuum. If you look at Robert's Rules of Order and you ask somebody to interpret it, there's a continuum. So where do we want to be as a council that's reflective of how this community would like to see us run? So I'll just bring up the issue of how motions are originated and garnered. So if you read some detailed reading on Robert's Rules of Order and parliamentary procedure, it talks about different roles that the individuals play. So I think we need to get something. We don't have to have 20 pages, but we need to get a page or two of protocol. And so how do we expect this meeting to flow?
Have we ever had that before? Have you seen that? Did they have that in Burnsville?
So the city of Burnsville adopted they used the Carver model, governance model, which lays out some governance policies as well as some meeting protocol, but they use Robert's rules.
So I'm not opposed to it, but I don't know what you're looking for to put in. Just reference Robert's rules. Do you have an example of something that we could look at?
Well, if you give me some homework, I'll write up some bullets and send them to Dana, and she can process them and decide how to disseminate them. I would give you some bullet points to give further explanation of what I'm talking about.
Is there an example that you're thinking? Because I'm not quite following where you're going with this either, other than just general Robert's rules.
Yeah,
Does the League of Minnesota Cities have some sort of, no?
Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. You know, it's not uncommon for cities in their city code even to refer to meetings being run in accordance with Roberts, or there are other similar treatises on how meetings of governments or not governmental bodies should be run. You know, it's to the point some of you are making, I've never seen a city, whether they have that in their code or not, actually follow Robert's Rules of Order. I mean,
That's my point.
It's followed to one degree or another, but it's not strictly complied with. In fact, there's very few bodies. I mean, Congress doesn't follow Robert's rules. They follow their own procedures, and bodies between us and them do the same. So it's a fair point. You know, if you wanted to reach agreement on a process that you're going to try and stick with, it's just been my experience that it seems to turn on the volume of the debate or the significance of the issue. Sometimes cities want to follow Roberts closely, and sometimes they move away from it, and it actually can vary from item to item. So it would be fine, I think, to try to reach an agreement among you about how you want to run meetings. I'm a little concerned about, though, memorializing it in a permanent way, because I have a feeling it's going to change. And maybe
Well,
sooner.
nothing's permanent.
Yeah.
Everything's
So-
subject to amendment and,
Well, this is just a guideline, it's not like getting into the nitty-gritty of it. I think we've kind of worked it out ourselves, in a way.
Yeah, and the problem with if we get too prescriptive is then we get bogged down in the mechanics. And I think the change that I've made just in the last couple of meetings, that we do the motion first, I mean, that's the proper way to do it, and then we have the discussion. I think it works well. I'm not opposed to something else, but I'm not sure if there's what's the issue that we're solving here by
well,
doing this?
let me get specific. First of all, I've attended council meetings in different cities. So this particular style is unique to Victoria. So let me just say that. And the uniqueness stems from the fact that the motions are all instigated by the mayor. So that's a completely different protocol than any city I've ever seen. So that's what I'm referring to
Yeah, well,
as a starting point.
anybody can make a motion. I just do that to get the discussion going, and then people can modify that motion, or I'm not opposed to other people making motions. It makes no difference to me. I think the correct process is to make the motion, get it second, then you have discussion. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, so Mayor and Council, under a strict interpretation of Roberts, to put an item before the body, someone makes a motion to do something, and then the body deliberates on that motion. So that's right under Roberts. That is, to Councilmember Vogt's point, that's not a common practice among cities, but that's what Roberts contemplates. So you're both right. I mean, right? You know, it's,
So,
there isn't a right and wrong way to do that at the city government level. That's something
Do you
that's
want-
a valid thing
you
to
want to take
discuss.
turns doing the motions, is that it? We could
Well,
do that.
Just go look at tapes of meetings from previous city councils. This council, I'm not being, I bring this up because this is appropriate for it to be brought up. I didn't bring this up as a unique issue. I think the context of the issue is right here. And if you were to go look at other cities, how they handle it, or go even look at tapes of Victoria for the past 10 years, basically it's more of a discussion where the mayor is the facilitator and not the pusher of emotions. So basically,
Is there some training, possibly? That might benefit? I mean, seriously, we're all pretty, you don't grow up learning Robert's Rules of Order in social studies class. You just
Trust me,
don't.
I looked at it and I just kind of glaze over.
Well, let's not lose sight of the fact that we all just heard, Bob, that everybody does it slightly differently, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if we really need to waste a lot of time getting into this. If you guys want to change and go back the old way, I don't have an objection to that, and I don't care if other people make the
I think
motions.
the
It's
council
just to
should
keep
make-
things going.
The council should make the decision by putting something in this policy. So whatever the council agrees to should go in this policy. And so it's a decision jointly.
All right, so we actually, the way this discussion went tonight, we have a valid motion. Do you want to amend that motion?
I don't think the policy's ready for a motion. I think we need to,
So you move that we table this then?
well, we table it for further refinement.
Well, we don't have to table it to refine it. This is an outline.
We can use it as a working tool.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you. I might suggest, if you're comfortable with everything that has been presented so far, in the draft. I might recommend that you consider approving this policy right now as it stands, so we can, from a staff perspective, change the format of the agenda and get the ball rolling on that. And to Council Member McMillan's question, is there training? Yes, there is training, and staff could find somebody to facilitate a training. We could go through that as a group, and then as a result of that training or an outcome of that training, we could make an additional amendment to the policy when we decide what our protocol is going to be, and amend the policy to include that information if the council has the desire.
So how about this? We have the motion to approve it, as Dana suggested. Outside of this, do you want to send her stuff and then let her look at that and bring something back so that we can adjust it again? Just because we adjust it now doesn't mean we can't adjust it again.
Since we're discussing this, my preference would be, and this is just me, so if we vote on this, my preference would be is to use this format as a working tool, because it's obviously an improvement of what we had, and it looks good, but to not call it a approved policy, that this would be a temporary policy or something that we would trial policy, or anything like that, which would open the door to coming back. What I'd be afraid of is that we'll never come back to this if we approve it. So this is what basically, I've had this issue in my head for months, and I was waiting for some context to bring it up. And this, I thought, was appropriate. So,
Deb, comments?
Can we approve the policy and direct staff to look for some training? And then at some point in time, I hear your concern about, I don't want to shut the door on this because this is the time to bring up this concern and get it resolved. So I think we would all benefit from some training about how to run a meeting, to do some protocol, that sort of thing. I don't want to hold up this progress because it does save staff time, and it would be a great improvement.
It is a step in the right direction. So the
agenda.
If training is the right word, maybe we need a workshop just to decide what is the format, how do we want to bring motions forward? Because to Mr. Vosa's point, Robert's rules can be suspended any time, and you can kind of fly by the hip.
We can make our own.
So
Right.
I don't think it's formal training we need. We just need to agree amongst ourselves how we want to run.
I think
Gregory, you just
There we go.
you did it. That's it.
Thank you.
That's it.
so
That's palatable to me.
Okay.
So I think there's council agreement. We'll approve this policy tonight because there's a valid motion. We'll have a workshop. We can talk about whatever adjustments we make. I, for one, am not opposed to, if the council wants to make adjustments, we can come back and adjust the policy again. There are policies. We can adjust them as many times as we wish. So,
Just one further point on.
I'm sorry, let me finish. Specific, I don't want you to be concerned that, no, we've already talked about that. I would support if you brought it back, even if we approve it tonight. If you want to talk about it again, that's fine. If there's changes that you want to make after we look into it a little bit more. Go ahead.
And specifically to your change here in the open forum, do we need to have some kind of a distinction between visitor presentation and just general public comments? Because when I read the open forum, I see 2 points here. Council sets aside 10 minutes for members of the public to address the council on items not on the agenda or application process at City Hall at each regular meeting of the City Council. That's the visitor presentation that you're referring to.
Well, in Councilmember Gregory, members of the council, it could be somebody who calls us in advance and says, I've got this issue that I would like to discuss with council. And now, and generally that communication is happening with our city clerk or with myself. And so when we have that heads up on something, that we can allow time and make sure that we know we've got a list of people. The mayor gets that list prior to the meeting. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be like a PowerPoint presentation or something that we saw today. It could be somebody saying, like Mr. Moss, for example, sorry to pick on you, yard waste. he reached out and said, I've got this issue, and he was going to come and talk during open forum. And maybe it's because we're so ingrained with open forum and the definition of what that is, we could change that. We could change that category to be something different. Could be something like citizen comments or something along those lines that could encompass the definition of what we know today as a visitor's presentation in open forum.
Because as a general public, if I'm reading this, I say, well, how come some people get 10 minutes and some only get 5? Because there's no differentiation. Does that need to be?
We could certainly change that.
Okay,
if
it's just a thought.
Yeah.
Council, do we want to make that change? I'm fine with just leaving, you can call it open forum and visitors presentations, just title
So
it as
then we'll
both.
give everybody 10 minutes?
No, open forum 5 for unplanned. If somebody takes the time to plan and put a presentation together, we'll give them 10 minutes. And if we just set that in the agenda, people should know coming in.
Change the title? Open forum?
Yeah, just change the title to list both items.
Okay, I'm good.
Further discussion, Mr. Mayor. 10 minutes, if you had 6 people come in with ideas, that extends the meeting 1 hour.
Right.
So, I mean, to me, this 10-minute thing is a little bit troublesome.
Well, I think the point, and maybe we call this out in the agenda then if necessary, I don't see this being abused, but we could call out that the only time we do visitor presentations, it's like the Lions Club or Tour de Tonka, the library, the Park and Rec report, although that's not exactly the same, but these visitor presentations are a little more formal, and they're usually from organizations, right? Less so than just a citizen coming up commenting about a particular item. But to your point, I don't want to have a whole bunch of those also. So,
I have an idea.
yeah, go ahead.
Open forum, A, Bloom, presentation, B. And then it's just described that way. And because all we're trying to do is get that in the same time as the open forum. So we just go open forum and visitor presentation, A is this and B is that.
Or I wonder if we would just say, visitor presentations need to be approved in advance by the city manager. So you can't just.
Yeah, we need to put some boundaries on it.
Right. And I think give Dana the ability to review and reject them. People can still come in and have 5 minutes at the open forum.
Mayor, members of the council, so we're putting some general guidelines around things, and in the policy, the mayor does have the ability to, if we had 2 presentations that take 10 minutes, we set 10 minutes aside for anybody, any public comments, any visitor presentations that might be, if we get through anything that's scheduled, we have the ability to hear other things, and generally, if it's unscheduled, you're getting the slip of paper, so you have an idea of how many people and how much time things are going to be. So
you get to say how much time you've got.
Right, and if there's too many, we can always schedule further time at the next meeting, right? Especially if it's unplanned, to kind of, if you will, box that in. I'm not sure here if we're getting to the point of trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. I think what Dana and the staff have proposed moves us forward in a significant way. I would like the council to just consider approving it as it is. We raised a number of questions, and then we can come back and adjust it if we discover that we're having problems with visitor presentations or taking too long, and at the same time discuss any of the protocol issues or any other issue in your one-on-ones with Dana that come up.
This is part of the protocol issue. Should we allow our meetings to expand by 30, 60, 90 minutes without, is it our protocol to allow this to happen? So I think this is part of the protocol issue. It's not just the things I mentioned. This is a big one. Should we be controlling the meetings to a certain extent so that we don't have, where we're walking out of the room at 10:45?
Right, well, I don't think,
That sort of thing.
well, I think we've done a good job historically in being able to do that, even when we had large groups of residents here.
I think my whole sense of reality has been changed forever by Marsh Lake Road. So, I mean, but, you know, so that's what I'm getting at with protocol is, you know, how are we disciplining our meetings? And so if we're gonna have a workshop, I'd like to know, is it gonna be in 30 days or 60 days or something like that? And that workshop isn't pushed out to October, something like that.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
members of the council, council member vote. I think as I'm looking ahead at and visualizing our future meetings list and what we have going on and kicking off budget, I think what we could commit to is bringing something back in July.
Are you okay with that?
Sure.
All right, so any further discussion?
I'm good.
If not, we have we have a valid motion to approve it as is now, and we can recircle back, or circle back to it in July. That's what I heard. Am I understanding it correctly?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Dana, that's what you needed?
That's what I needed. Thank you.
Yep. Next item, 8A, we're back to the ADA transition plan. This is different than the downtown ADA improvements, I'm assuming.
This is the big one.
It is, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Ann? It's the mouse again? The mouse is trying to get
I'll
away.
tell you what, between the mice and the chickens.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Back in March of this year, I presented a draft ADA transition plan that is required of the city to approve. We, at that point, had a 30-day public comment period, which we received 0 comments on regarding the plan. Just to kind of refresh your memories, the ADA was enacted back in '90, and Title II of the ADA requires that the city adopt the transition plan, and it included that self-evaluation, schedule and budget, contact information, ADA design standards, grievance procedure, and public outreach, with that last one being our public comment period. So annually, through many of our street reconstruction projects, trail projects, we're already actually doing some of these and implementing ADA compliance projects as we go through completing these projects and look at ways to make improvements out in those fields with some of the existing budgets that we have today, and also, again, through projects. So the ADA transition plan requires us to break down the priority areas. The downtown sidewalks and crosswalks have become our priority 1 area. Public facilities, meaning buildings, parks, playgrounds, trails, sidewalks, as priority area number 2, and then sidewalks and trails in residential areas as a priority number 3. The city is required to identify a time frame with which these projects or with these areas will be ADA compliant, and we're looking out at about 20 years today in order to make those compliant areas, the areas compliant. So, and those costs, the costs that will be spread out over those 20 years, we've got the downtown project that you just approved tonight with TIF funds. Some of our existing budgets are taking care of some. Ideally, what I'd like to do in this next budget session is to have a line item, I haven't told Trish this yet, but another line item within the budget that would be identified as ADA improvements and put some certain dollar amounts in there that would specify and every single year that these are the areas that we're going to continue to work on. So there will be certainly a financial impact to the city as we move forward with these. And staff annually will continue to identify what those are as we move forward.
I have a question. Are there any grants available to help us with this?
That's something I'll certainly look into. I haven't found anything specific as it relates to the ADA compliance.
They're requiring it. I would think that they would.
The federal government does, yes.
Yeah.
They're not interested in helping us necessarily.
So I know that I had Bob briefly look over it, and I have followed the recommended guidelines that have been provided by the League of Minnesota Cities and also the federal government as it relates to the transition plan. So I'm comfortable moving ahead with that, and implementing.
Can I have a motion?
Right here?
Yeah.
I'll do it. Approve the City of Victoria ADA transition plan.
I'll second that. Discussion?
Discussion is, do we have an estimate of how much this total program is going to cost the city over 20 years?
Based on just some very preliminary estimates, you're looking at probably in the 800,000 to 1.1 million. And again,
total?
Yes.
That's
rough budgets.
That's less than I would have thought.
So again, some of these, like, the downtown sidewalks, I think that was a couple $100,000 out of TIF. Some of the sidewalks that will eventually have to be replaced within the neighborhoods will be assessed to property owners. That's our assessment policy dictates that. So that will help cover some of the costs for that. So yeah, it's a rough estimate based on what we know today.
40, 50,000 a year?
That's my guess, yes.
All right, got it. Council, other comments, questions? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ann. Next one. Oh, Ann, you're up again.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Council. So earlier today, we had a work session on the Wasserman Park and financing options. So now we're back to the actual cooperative agreement or the revised cooperative agreement. Back in 2017, the city actually approved one cooperative agreement with the Watershed District that really laid out what we were going to do, which was going to create a preliminary concept plan. We were going to take public comment on the plan and then figure out a way to get the park completed. So over that period of time, we've had several discussions with the council, with the Watershed District, and back late fall, I believe it was, there was a lot of discussion that came up regarding the district's ability to help fund through the Carver County Master Financing Program that they had just recently been involved with. So we kind of went back and took some steps backward and looked at some other opportunities for financing. Also, the district's willingness to help out with design costs, the district's willingness to help manage the project, and also giving the city an opportunity to really evaluate the ability of the city to utilize that master financing plan with or through Carver County. We also looked at the opportunity to roll in land costs and construction costs together to help with an overall financing plan rather than breaking everything up. But I know Trish tonight gave you several options to consider as we move forward with this park financing. So the district then provided an updated or revised cooperative agreement for Wasserman Park, and that is within your packet. I know that the city attorney and the district's council, we've had several meetings and discussions between the two on how to move this forward. And I think we've gotten to a pretty good place. And I'm sure Bob will have some additional comments this evening. And one of the things that I know that he wants you to know is that in the first cooperative agreement that really the district can't compel the city to close on the property. The way that the cooperative agreement is written, and with this one, if we do move into it, it really will compel us to close on that property with the district. So,
Or allow them to compel us.
yes, yeah, it will. Yeah. I know Anna Brown is here from the Watershed District, and she may have some additional comments, questions, if you've got have any. I'm sure she would be happy to answer them, but we're now back to the point of trying to get this wrapped up again so we can move this project forward. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, or Anna, if you've got any comments.
Can we get the motion up or the
Yes,
resolution up?
Oops.
Can I have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the revised cooperative agreement with the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and authorize the design scope for Lake Wasserman Park.
Second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Discussion? Councilwoman, go ahead.
So I'm understanding we want to hear a little bit from the city attorney regarding this cooperative agreement and how this is different than the first one and what we're getting ourselves into from a legal standpoint.
So, Mayor and Council, I will just kind of soft shoot. I don't have anything particular planned other than what staff has indicated, which is just, and it doesn't, I don't have any, it's not my place to have any reservation about the change from the current agreement, which you would not be, the city would not be able to be compelled to close, to an agreement where the district would have that power. That's purely a policy decision, so that's not a legal problem. It's just something I wanted to bring to your attention. Beyond that, I guess just to say something about it, my understanding is that this agreement doesn't expressly say on its face that it's amending the prior agreement or superseding it or any of those things. My understanding is, and I'd let staff or the district weigh in if I'm not getting this right, but my understanding is that in effect this really just takes the project further than the current agreement has taken it. We've gotten through what the existing agreement contemplates. We haven't yet completed the project or even contracted for the project, and so this agreement now just takes the next step or three or whatever you want to use as the metaphor for what this agreement does. You don't want to, I'm going to get this saying all wrong, but you don't want to throw away the good to try and get the perfect, and that's kind of been my comments. I've made a number of comments about we could make this more perfect by doing this, that, or the other thing, but the agreement is good. I don't have a reservation about the agreement. There are some areas where I think it could be done more simply, and I've made that comment, but that's not a legal objection. That's just that we could write this shorter or more simply. So, that's kind of my input.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Do we need to add language that this supersedes the previous agreement?
Mayor and Council,
Would that be
no,
cleaner?
I don't think that's what's intended. I mean, again, I'd
Okay.
like to our staff or to the district to comment, but I mean, I don't think it's literally, because there is this idea that if the park improvements don't move forward, we're going to sort of default back to the existing purchase agreement and the existing
Got it.
agreement, and so I don't think it literally would do that, so I don't think that language is necessary.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. Council, comments, questions? None?
Well, someone,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just briefly, can we have the timeline reiterated? We agreed to signing the agreement tonight, and how is this all going to play out over the next year and a half, 2 years?
So our goal is, tonight we approve the agreement. Through the summer, we will work on the design scope, final design scope. Have that done and come back to you and say, yep, here it is, here's the plan. At that point in time, we would revise and execute the purchase agreement. December of this year, hopefully, we would complete the 90% design, go out for bid, and plan for opening construction in the spring of 2020. During that time, the council will need to figure out a funding plan, way to finance, and then how that finance plan will dictate how you must proceed with a public hearing with, and that will be legal stuff that side of the table would handle. But we would could start and end construction in 2020 would be the goal.
And that's the complete project, not phased.
Complete project at this point in time, yes.
So the, the timing, when we must make a decision on the financing methods, is when we sign the purchase agreement. This is the cooperative agreement. When do we need to have the financing puzzle solved?
Councilmember Vogt and Council,
Anna, for the record.
Oh, excuse me, Anna Brown, Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. The way that we've structured it in the cooperative agreement is that by the approval of 90% design, we'll need a final decision on the financing approach, because that way, as we go from 90% design to final design, construction documents, bidding, and all of that, we have kind of locked in and can start moving forward the financing on a parallel timeline. So my best guess is that that's going to be November, December of 2019 that we'd be moving towards that 90% design. It's really dependent on, we are going to RFP the next phase of design. So over the next month or two, we'll be working on that, and it's sort of dependent on what that designer comes back with in terms of timeline. We do have still some flexibility, so my sort of approach is going to be, let's give them enough time to do a really good design, to run a good process, with the target for 90% design being kind of end of 2019.
Thank you. Quick question. Dana, if the council decides in June on the funding approach, whatever strategy that happens to be, that gives enough time to get to November, December to have the funding approved and ready to go, so that when they hit 90% design, the funding's locked in?
Mm-hmm.
So that timeline works?
We can work with that timeline.
Okay.
Mhm.
So the financing approach is probably necessary to do the budget also. Is that true?
And it would, if you want to do, if you're targeting 2020 construction, yes, the timeline that Anna and Ann have laid out would allow us to meet that.
So even though our drop dead date is November, we probably should do this in June.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As part of the budget process.
Right, that's I think what we agreed to earlier today. Thank you, Anna. Council, further comments, questions?
Very exciting project. I'm anxious to move forward.
Yep.
I am too.
Okay. Go ahead.
The rule of thumb I'm using is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yes.
Clear about that.
Aside from that other thing you jumbled out, yeah.
Did you write, we probably need to put that on the wall.
Did we take a vote on this?
No, I'm going to do that now.
We moved it and we seconded.
Yeah, we've got a valid motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
And thank you, Anna, too. Okay, for those that are tuning in late, item 8C was taken off the agenda. That will be coming up at some point in the future.
It will be a future
Okay.
to be determined.
All right, so the next item, reports of the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. In your packet, there was the April 2019 fire report, and the other thing that I would just like to mention for the public who may be viewing this evening, if you haven't had a chance to come and see our newest art exhibition in the council chambers, we invite you to do that. The goal is to change it out every 2 months, and we have stuff lined up through the end of the year. We have 13 artists from Minnesota on display here in City Hall from Minnesota Outdoor Painters of Minnesota. It's a 501c3 nonprofit, and so we're very excited to have this artwork on display, and it will be on display through the end of June.
Perfect. Thank you, Dana. Bob, anything? Mayor, nothing, thank you.
Yep. Deb?
No report, thank you.
Mr. Vogt?
No report?
Are you Julie or Judy tonight?
I'm Judy.
Judy. Anything?
I just want the people to know that with this trail connection that we're trying to figure out, I've started going to the trails and walking them to see firsthand what is entailed with what has to be done. And I did my first one today, and that was the Lake Bridge area. So I've got a very clear view of that now. And if the other residents in the different areas want to take me along and show me the ways, give me a call. I got another one. And I just want the people that are worried about the compost and the trash. We did talk about it during the strategic planning session, and we are working on it.
Thank you. Mr. Gregory?
No report.
Very quickly, on Lake Bridge Trail, I want to clarify something. If people are looking at the map and all of the trail gaps, there's numbers on them, and the Lake Bridge Trail is number 7. Don't confuse that with the priority of the trails. They're just the number of the trails gap. I heard a number of people spoke to me, and they thought that number was the priority number. It's not. It's just all of the trail gaps were given a number. The priority is in a different document, and I would ask if the council doesn't object, Dana, can we get that out? Because there seems to be a little bit of confusion out in the public. They need to see the priority map. I think there were 4 trail gaps that were prioritized, right?
Yes.
So that we can kind of clarify that for the public.
Mhm.
All right. That's all I have. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned.